Hello, everyone. How's it going? Welcome back. It'll just be me for now to start. Abby's just got her friend coming to pick up her grandbaby there, that the little kid that she likes to babysit. So she'll join us in a while, in a minute. Well, a little while, who knows? But shouldn't be long. Hope everyone's having a good week. Hope everyone's staying warm with all this crazy winter weather we have. So today I wanted to finish some of the things I meant to talk about last week. I was having some technical difficulties that was making it hard to deliver a large amount of information packed into one show like I like to do, but sometimes that gets to be a little bit excessive. I just don't like splitting things up like this because too much happens in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. That it's hard to kind of get the views, and people maybe are more interested in what's immediately relevant in the news cycle. So that's part of it, but I don't know. So I'm still trying to figure out kind of what's happening. It's turning into a little bit of a research project on the Middle East here. So as you can see in the title, I titled the video, "This Desert Still Isn't Big Enough for the Both of Us, the Muslim Brotherhood Zionist Cold War." So that's the research that I've been doing today, is looking into the Muslim Brotherhood, the history, past, CIA influence, anti-communist, Cold War history. It's all very interesting because last week we were talking about how the UAE has a very an ideological animosity towards the Muslim Brotherhood that seems very important for their foreign policy objectives. So, so that makes me want to understand what sort of entity the Muslim Brotherhood is. So we can go on, Bella. One. So I'll get around to that. But before I do, I had a few things from last week that I felt actually I made pretty significant error in failing to report last week. That kind of made what I was talking about more relevant. So let me start with that there. So this was the I don't know, the burying the lead or something like that. Not even. This was the big omission that I made, the embarrassing omission last week. So Yemen separatist leader flees with Emirati help, Saudi coalition blamed. Wow, these share this tab instead here. We'll read this other article on the same issue so that we can actually read it. I mean, the ads are not great either, but they're not so invasive. So Saudi-led coalition says SDC's al-Zubaydi fled to UAE via Somaliland. That's basically the core thing that it needs to be reported. A secessionist leader took a boat to Berbera and then boarded plane that flew to Abu Dhabi via Mogadishu, coalition says. This was from 8th of January, 2026. The Saudi Arabia-led coalition in Yemen has announced the leader of the secessionist STC had fled to the UAE via Somaliland after skipping planned peace talks in Riyadh, accusing the UAE of smuggling him out of the country. In a statement on Thursday, the coalition said Darus al-Zubaydi escaped in the dead of night on Wednesday on board a vessel that departed Aden in Yemen to the port of Berbera in Somaliland. Al-Zubaydi then boarded a plane along with UAE officers and flew to Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. The plane turned off its identification systems over the Gulf of Oman, then turned it back on 10 minutes prior to arrival at Al Reef Military Airport in Abu Dhabi, the statement said. There was no immediate comment from the STC or the UAE. Somalia's immigration authority said in a statement that it is investigating reports concerning the alleged unauthorized use of Somalia's national airspace and airports to facilitate the movements of a fugitive political figure, which it added would be a serious violation of the country's sovereignty. It confirmed the move could deepen the feud between Saudi Arabia and the UAE that came to light after the STC, which Riyadh says is backed by Abu Dhabi, launched an offensive against Saudi-backed Yemeni government troops in December, which we talked about last week. So that's just something that I felt I needed to, an important detail that I failed to mention was that this fugitive figure is the catalyst for Somalia breaking ties with the UAE. So let me just see if I need to keep reporting there, because this is old news at this point. So I'm just trying to so yeah, maybe here's a video. We'll play that for a minute. So since we're waiting for Abby.
Yemen's Saudi-led coalition says a southern separatist leader has fled to the UAE via Somaliland. It comes a day after Ida for talks in Riyadh. Yemen's Saudi-led coalition has put out a statement about al-Zubaydi's whereabouts and alleged escape. It reads like this, in part, that al-Zubaydi was on a vessel that deported him to Aden towards the breakaway region of Somaliland after midnight on January the 7th. It says the ship shut off its identification system and arrived at the port of Berbera around noon. The statement then says a flight picked up al-Zubaydi and his companions without specifying its destination. That was done under the supervision of Emirati officers. The flight landed in Mogadishu and waited for an hour before it departed again. The plane then headed towards the Arabian Gulf and turned off its transponder over the Gulf of Oman. It was reactivated again shortly before landing in Abu Dhabi. So let's bring in our correspondent, Hashim Ahilbar. Aidarus al-Zubaydi, you've been explaining this to us for the last few days, really is, I'm tempted to say was, I don't know, the face of the Southern separatist movement. Is he out of the picture now that he's left Yemen?
Definitely. He was backed by the United Arab Emirates, put into place in 2017 as the leader of the STC in a push to pave the way for putting together an independent southern state. This is why he was widely perceived to be the voice of the separatist movement. From a Saudi perspective today, he's a fugitive. He had a chance to fly to Riyadh to negotiate a settlement. From now onwards, from a Saudi perspective, his era is over, and this explains why some of his lieutenants are now in Riyadh, taking over as potential leaders, particularly Abu Zar al-Mahrami, who commands the giant faction, which is now in control of Aden.
Explain what's going on in Riyadh, because it does seem that there is now a split within the STC. There are those who have fled their leader, Aidarus al-Zubaydi, and there is a part of the STC, the Southern Yemeni separatists, who are in Saudi Arabia talking, negotiating with the Saudis.
So a few days ago, Aidarus Zubudi announced a constitutional. He made a constitutional announcement where he said that we are here, and then within a period of few years, we will set a new constitution and declare an independent state.
That's independent South Yemen.
Exactly. That's no longer on the option. Now the talk is about a federal system where with one authority, but North and South will have also the local governments like the federal system in the West. So the idea of secession is no longer on the table. However, the Saudis are now trying to reach out to different secessionist, separatist leaders, those who have control over troops and people on the ground in Hadramaut, Al-Mahra, Dhala, Abiyan, and Lahaj, and see how they can move forward, with the aim that ultimately you have to widen the specter of the discussion and convince the Houthis to join it to talk about what happens next in Yemen. If you go for unity, you have to remind your own people that the northern part of the country is still controlled by the Houthis, whom the Saudis accuse of being an Iranian proxy trying to destabilize the entire region, and Saudi Arabia in particular.
We're looking at the details of who controls what in Yemen and who's got momentum in Yemen and who's allied with who. But if we pull right back, I think it's important to remind our viewers this has global significance because everything that happens in that region happens in a major energy and trade region.
It is a very important region because you have the Gulf of Aden and you have Bab el-Mandeb, both of which very active, very important, and you control them. You control passage of all the tankers to the Red Sea. This is number one. Al-Qaeda controls vast territory in the Sahel region, almost the size of Europe. It was inspired by Al-Qaeda, which existed in Yemen, the most aggressive offshoot of the global Al-Qaeda. So the concerns remain high, the stakes remain high. And I think the Americans are closely monitoring what is happening in southern Yemen because they fear an instability that could lead to more violence and anarchy.
Hashim Al-Bara, thank you very much for joining us in the studio.
He's just got thrown a dig at anarchy right at the end. Greasy academic, whatever. Sorry. So that's yet again more, I guess, shall we call it propaganda from Al Jazeera. However, when we're talking about their adversary UAE, maybe it's useful for them to see what they have to say. So how's it going, Jacqueline? Thanks for joining us. Halfway through watching the Open Forum episode 2, where Abby's trying to teach you sign language, but what sign language do Canadians use? ASL, BSL, or does Canada have its own sign language? From what I'm aware of, I think we just use the American sign language, but I actually don't really know. My bad. I could look into that though. Sounds interesting. Is BSL the British sign language? So let me put your comments on stage there. So kind of a little bit flustered without Abby as far as what to what way to take this sort of stream. But at least for some kind of a segue. So this Al Zubaydi guy escaped on a plane from the Somalian airport, and it flew over the Gulf of Oman with the transponder off. So I'm wondering if they also maybe violated Oman's airspace as well. But I did have an article that I meant to read last week detailing Oman's reaction to what the UAE did, which I felt was significant. But for Oman is one of those countries that no one ever talks about. Somehow they have a very good way of staying out of the news cycle. Some nations seem to want to be in the news cycle every day. They want everyone talking about them. Israel comes to mind. Other countries like Oman, they want to be in the background. They don't want anyone to talk about them at all, it seems like. And that's a part of their strategy for success. So maybe we should talk about Oman more often. It's another Gulf monarchy, right? One of these disturbingly stable monarchy systems that operates kind of in the shadows, like I'm saying. So not exactly like I've got any champions in the Middle East that are inspiring me too much. There tends to be a lot of I heard someone, I don't remember, one of the political analysts I like to watch throughout the week, he said a saying that kind of seems to resonate. One thing I think it is, the one thing about Arabs is that they agree to not agree. You know, it's so one of the expressions of the culture, Arabic sayings, I guess. So, but I digress. Let me get to this little article here. From mediation to security partnership, how Oman's stance on the Yemen crisis has changed. This is from 10 days ago. This is a little bit awkward how close it is to the edge of the page here. But am I hearing Abby popping in? Oh, yeah, there she is. What's up, Abby? Oh, not ready yet? Oh, what's up?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for holding it down.
No worries. I'm a bit awkward without you, but
I feel the same way. I feel the same way when I have to do it by myself. I'm like, I hope it's Michael approved.
Well, my radio training from college is a little bit rusty. That's from like a decade ago, so I kind of forget how to prepare what I'm saying so that I don't sound so awkward. But I should look into some of that. Do a refresher course. So how are you?
I'm okay. I was just thinking about what you were saying. I was like, I probably should do that. It wouldn't be
There is a bit of an art to it. There's a reason why they teach you the skills in school, because people assume there's a reason maybe why people have low numbers is because you're trying to attract new viewers and you're being some kind of boring, not for TV kind of personality. You don't really, it's not being suppressed. You could always say, oh, the algorithms are suppressing me. But yeah, but maybe also you're kind of boring and monotone. You know, a lot of people out there.
I was thinking that too. I was like, because there's some folks that are very, very animated, you know, like it's almost like a character.
Yeah, but draws people in.
I'm like, oh, are we boring?
Are we animated enough? But this is a double-edged sword. It's almost, maybe it's like a dialectic or something like that, where there's the people who have a lot of things worth hearing, but they don't have whatever you call it, the charisma. It's the charisma is the word. They don't got the riz, you know. So people just don't hear the important information because they fall asleep trying to listen to it. And then you got the people who everyone's listening to because they're really interesting to watch, but they end up being kind of empty as far as important content, you know.
Hi there, Jacqueline. Extra below.
Yeah.
And there's some folks here that aren't in the chat yet. Hello to you too.
Yeah, I see our numbers going up now that you're here. The podcast a little bit more watchable, I guess.
You know that's not true.
Hello, Steve. Thanks
Hello,
for
Wolfie.
So let me get to this little article I was about to start reading. So, and then I'll just let you know what I covered without you. I did. Oops, let me. We're full screen. That's why. I did cover this article about the STC's Al Zubaydi fled to the UAE via Somaliland, which was a big reason for the diplomatic falling out of Somalia with the UAE, canceling all of their arrangements that they had, kicking them out of the country, telling them to their ambassador to leave, sort of stuff. So
yeah, I kind of feel like I
if you're
remember
wanting to
seeing this or hearing about this rather.
Right. So I mentioned it to you off. So
Oh,
yes,
maybe that's
if you
what
want
it was.
to recap, yeah. If you want to hear what I had to say, you could rewatch later, I guess.
Yeah, I will.
Sure, you tend to do that anyway. Yeah. So without further ado, from mediation to security partnership, how Oman's stance on the Yemen crisis has changed. The Saudi-Emirati crisis in Yemen is no longer a mere passing tactical disagreement between two former allies. Within a few weeks, it has transformed into a political and security storm that is redrawing the map of influence within the Gulf and along the shores of the Arabian Sea. Although, who knows what will happen depending on how the Emirates react to the Saudis' takeover of southern Yemen. What they said is that we can go back to having a nice amicable relationship if you guys just stay out of Yemen. So if the Emirates, the UAE agrees to that arrangement, everything will be all fine in paradise, wherever. No more trouble in paradise. But anyway, after years of managing the rivalry between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi under the umbrella of their 2015 partnership, the dispute erupted into the open with the expansion of the UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council's influence in southern Yemen and its extension into eastern Yemeni governance near the Omani border. At this moment, Muscat, which I guess is the capital of Oman, known for decades for its diplomacy of mediation and neutrality, has emerged as a silent partner of Riyadh in an unprecedented shift in its regional behavior. Apparently, much how Egypt has emerged as a silent partner, or a more silent enemy of the UAE in Sudan. Perhaps we have to wait and see. All this is pretty complicated. A lot of backstabbing going on with these people, or these nations, I should say. Cumulative threats. According to a report by the British website Middle East Eye, published on January 9th, 2026, intelligence was shared and tacit cooperation took place between Oman and Saudi Arabia in strikes targeting the UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council in Al Mara Governorate in late December 2025 and early January 2026. This Omani shift cannot be understood in isolation from the broader context. Saudi Arabia, which had supported the Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council, has in recent weeks entered into direct confrontation with the STC amid accusations that Abu Dhabi facilitated the escape of STC leader Adaris al-Zubaydi from Aden to the UAE via Somaliland and then Mogadishu. Amid this escalation, international reports indicate that Saudi Arabia has begun translating its battlefield gains into political and developmental influence in southern Yemen through pledges of financial support and repositioning in areas that, until recently, were considered within the UAE's sphere of influence. Oman has consistently presented itself as a mediator, not a party to the conflict. Its recent history is replete with behind-the-scenes roles in highly sensitive issues, from facilitating U.S.-Iranian communication channels to managing parallel lines of communication with both the Houthis and the Gulf states simultaneously. You see how these people that play the balancing game, these nations, the small nations that don't really have much influence otherwise, they actually play a rather important role of like mediating the disagreements between the bigger powers. So we should try not to forget about what they're up to.
Right.
Muscat played a mediating role to contain a potential escalation between Washington and the Houthis in May 2025, according to an official Omani statement and Reuters reports. However, 2025-26 marked a pivotal moment as the Yemeni crisis transformed from a distant issue into a direct threat bordering Oman. Al Mara Governorate is not merely a peripheral area in eastern Yemen. It represents the closest geographical and tribal extension to Oman and a highly sensitive crossing point for any shift in the balance of power near the border fence. So Just like
Oman,
always.
you don't hear much about that.
That's
that
what I'm
country.
saying. But just like every
I almost forgot. I was like, oh, that's a country.
another kingdom, I was saying.
Right. Hi, Sean and Black Life, by the way.
Hey, thanks for popping in. So I was just about to say, just like so many things, it's not my problem until it's comes up
It's
to
your doorstep.
to the border, and then all of a sudden it's not in my backyard, right? But anyway, where was I here? In this context, the military advance of a UAE-backed separatist force toward eastern Yemen appeared to be an encroachment on Muscat's natural sphere of influence, which is pretty small apparently, because they didn't care if they're on the other side of Yemen, but as soon as they get to their border. A breach of a safe distance Oman had maintained for decades. A Middle East Eye report, citing diplomatic sources, stated that Muscat shared intelligence with Riyadh and cooperated covertly in strikes against the Southern Transitional Council in Al-Mara, after viewing its eastward advance as a direct threat to its national security. In such a context, neutrality becomes a political luxury, especially when military expansion becomes a scenario that touches the borders and threatens to redraw the map of influence in a highly sensitive tribal environment. But Oman's concerns about Abu Dhabi are not limited to Yemen alone. This is I found particularly interesting. In January 2011, the Sultanate announced the discovery of a spy network linked to the UAE's state security apparatus, which targeted the ruling regime and the mechanisms of the government and the army, according to Reuters, citing Omani sources. So 2011 was when the Arab Spring thing happened, Arab revolutions in all these countries all over the Arab world, and apparently the UAE was meddling in the Oman government with a spy network. So, and that's kind of affected their relations to this day. So, although the issue was later contained diplomatically, it left a profound mark on Muscat's perception of invisible threats and building networks of influence within societies. Since then, the concept of soft security has become an integral part of Oman's strategic calculations when dealing with its wealthier and more influential neighbors. Therefore, the UAE's support for a separatist project approaching the borders of Al-Mara is not viewed in Muscat as an isolated event, but rather as part of a cumulative pattern of expansionist and influential attempts. This sensitivity is further complicated by geoeconomic factors. Oman has close trade and business ties with the UAE, particularly Dubai, making any direct confrontation costly. However, the transformation of the threat into a matter of sovereignty and borders makes containment a more realistic option than traditional mediation. I was looking at this picture. I was like, man, this is like one of those showdowns that they do before like a boxing.
Yeah.
That is not like, you know how we say that everything's political theater, you know? They're all just pretending to be adversaries. I'm pretty sure the way that those guys are looking at each other, that's some real like competition and animosity, you know? That's just an observation.
Jacqueline is asking, was this meddling backed by Western governments?
Meddling, the UAE meddling in Oman? I don't think so. I think this is more just like smaller powers messing with each other.
Helping to mediate. I just pulled up a map of the Middle East just to give people a visual.
It helps to know where the country is we're talking about. Maybe not everyone knows so much where Oman is.
Okay, so I'm going to pull it up. But I found this to be interesting. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But so if you could look at this map. So they're considering Egypt to be part of the Middle East. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it definitely.
Like, how is...
It's been so Arabized for such a long time that it's just not considered part of Africa. The Middle East is like part of Asia, but it's treated like its own continent, right?
Well, all of this was considered North Africa at one time, before they came up with the Middle East. But anyway, Oman is down here.
That's a little small. Can we blow that up a bit?
Small. Okay. Let me see if I
Open
can
it in a new
it.
window or something.
Yeah. So let me open it.
But
James,
Oman's a
James,
very
James.
just as strategically important as any of these for the closure, like activities around the straits there. Like everyone makes a whole lot of a great big deal about how Iran can close the strait whenever they want to, but all these other states border the strait as well. They just don't have the firepower to really like shut it down like Iran does. But they have all kinds of other like economic power and influence like that, diplomatic influence.
Yep. So Oman is just south of the Persian Gulf.
Right, and the United Arab Emirates is
Next
just
to
above
Yemen.
Oman, as if you can see there.
Right here. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see. Oh, you can see my little clicker. Okay. And then Somaliland. This is Somaliland right here, right?
Somaliland, yeah, you can't really see.
This little strip right here.
Yeah, well, I think there might be Eritrea is the strip there, and then Somaliland is. It'd be better to call up a different map so we can
Right.
Somaliland
Right.
isn't really internationally recognized, so I don't think it actually properly shows up on the map.
Well, I think it does. Okay, I wanted to ask you about that too. I was like, like just one day. Oh, that was Eritrea. Okay.
Jackson has a good question. Have Oman and Yemen always been two separate countries? I don't know. I should find that out.
Okay.
I think they've since the inception of Yemen and the inception of Oman, they've been separate. They've never been joined together. But they're before, like it's always these tribe, like in the Middle East, it's tribes and sultans and stuff. So it wouldn't necessarily have been a nation as much as it would be like a territory ruled, like a tribal territory or some kind of kingdom,
Yeah, so you're right. It's Eritrea was what I was. Right. Right. Oop. I don't know why I just did that.
And then there's Djibouti, and then Somalia, beside Djibouti. So, lesson. Hope you guys are looking forward to it.
Yeah, I see Somaliland. Somaliland isn't on here. Somaliland is kind of like the parliament, like most America, like on not Bill Clinton. Joe Biden was like, I would do that, but the parliament said no. And I was like, what? We have a parliament? Like, where did that come from? It's like none of us knew that. Like that just came out of nowhere. And so Somaliland just came out of like, where was I?
It doesn't necessarily come out of nowhere. It does have like a historical. There's a reason why they're able to create that region out of whole cloth. Basically, is because like one of them used to be the British colony, and the other would be the Italian colony in the area. And so it's pretty funny to see them act like there's no neo-colonialism happening here when they're trying to revert the territory back to the colonial borders from the early 1900s, right?
Hi, Rondo. Like Rondo was saying, the Middle East at one point was a colony of Kemet. So Kemet is Egypt.
Interesting.
Yeah. Before Egypt was called Egypt, it was called Kemet.
Yeah. Well, and there's a very, very fascinating history as far as Egypt has a very long, well-documented history. So there was times where Egypt was powerful, dominating the regions around it. Long history of that. But there's also times where, like I forget what it's called, the Ethiopian. It wasn't Ethiopia back then. Was it Kesh? The Kingdom of Kesh or whatever? They would kind of dominate Egypt for some centuries until Egypt is strong enough to dominate them, sort of thing. The Nubians, yeah. and the Sudanese had a moment in time where the roles were reversed, because historically Sudan has been dominated by the Egyptian pharaohs, but there was a time where they managed to come in and conquer Egypt. But we'll have to go over that history another time. I don't really know enough about it to talk about it. What I know is what I just shared with you. So yeah, Kush was an interesting history. Maybe we should all learn more about, especially with all this stuff about Somalia and Ethiopia. That region is blowing up right now.
So, sorry, my brother was calling me. Got a little distracted. I also kind of found it interesting, that first map that I had pulled up, like it was supposed to be a Middle East map. Okay, you've added Egypt. Weird. I think that's a way to separate Israel from Africa, though. But anyway, but they didn't add like Pakistan and Afghanistan. Weird. Like,
Well, that's the Arab world is huge, right? So where does it stop? Like, if they're gonna include Egypt, why didn't they include Libya? Why didn't they include Tunisia, Morocco? You know,
Morocco's in Africa.
Why don't they include Indonesia and Malaysia, right, and India? Because there's millions of Arabic Muslim people there too. That's where it gets around the periphery. It gets where the bloodlines start to mix. It gets confusing as to where do you draw the line. This is where it gets the concept of race is somewhat like false. People would say it's the social construct, and it has it's not so much grounded in reality enough as people would like it to be, because people are people at the end of the day, and nationalism is something that's imposed onto humanity in a way to try and clarify, because there's all this diversity. We try to like, you look different for this reason. But
yeah, I was trying to find a better map, but
now we're into I don't know.
Now I'm confused. Oh, and thank you, Sean, for the correction, because I kept saying parliament, but it's actually parliamentarian. It's like one person, whereas parliament is like
what I thought you were saying.
Congress. Yeah, the parliamentarian.
And hello, XD, by the way.
Hi, X.
Hey. He's saying they fought off the Romans, the Nubians, Kingdom of Kush. But I prefer.
Yeah, Rondo, I was thinking. Oh, sorry.
I'm saying I prefer our kingdoms to be in history, not in still alive today. Which there's way too many kingdoms still. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just laughing. Rondo said, "Bro, Malaysians or Malaysians."
Malay Asians. But
that's part of Asia.
That's where the thing about, like, I was got in a little bit of a argument in a chat the other day with some libertarians, like, because look, a communist shows up or whatever, watching. It's the Union of the Unwanted, if you ever want to check out their podcast. But
the Union of the Unwanted.
Yeah, a lot of our independent media people are more of the libertarian political delineation or something. I don't know. You'd have to talk to them about how they represent themselves. But they were saying that imperialism is not capitalism. So the Marxist-Leninist view is imperialism is the last stage of capitalism. It's what do you call it? The Venusaurs of the Bulbasaur of capitalism. You know what I'm saying? But other people would disagree. And if you look at history, I feel like it's a little strange to me that Lenin describes imperialism as that final extension of capitalism, when there's that long history of empire for thousands of years before what the capitalism is considered to start in like the 15th century, because there is this genuine shift from a feudal system to a new system, which we call capitalism, because the middleman rose to prominence as opposed to nobleman, whatever, these monarchs, right? The more reactionary as far as the progress of time. But it is interesting. I could also say that capitalism, you could push the origin of capitalism farther back, thousands of years. That's where I feel like these monarchies or these emperors, they're the ones who really created the system of capital, and like they're the ones who created the monetary system. But then we kind of give the credit of capitalism to 15th century Enlightenment kind of figures.
I watched this really interesting thing today. It was spot on. It's like something we talk about all the time, but the way they were able to articulate it, I was pretty impressed. But it's kind of off the topic, but kind of on the topic.
Sure.
I don't know if you want me to play it, but
Go ahead.
hello, happy Thursday, kill your egregores. And I was looking back, I was looking for this Rondo. I was like, I don't see, wait a minute now. You know, I get anxious if I don't see the peace, fam. And you're in the building. And did you answer Jacqueline's question? You guys have a different sign language?
Which question?
I kind of saw that way. This is before I got here.
I don't know. I thought there was a question. Have
She was
Oman
asking, do you guys use American Sign Language or British Sign Language?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did answer that one.
What's the answer? I'm
curious.
From
what I don't really know. I said from what I think I remember is American Sign Language that we use, but don't quote me on it. Maybe do your own research if you'd rather know more concretely. I could easily look it up right now, but
that is so interesting. I'm looking at the chat. So East Asian Muslims are the largest groups of Muslims in the world.
Yeah, and nobody talks about them because they're Asians. So how could they be Muslim? Because we think of a Muslim, we think of an Arab person, right? It's kind of a racist thing that we do with that. But the reason,
well, I think nobody just talks about them for us to know. You know what I mean? Like I was today years old when I heard that.
Well, this is where I was talking
Indonesia.
About the history of imperialism, because the reason why Islam is so widespread is because they had armies conquering all these different places in Africa and all these different places in Asia, and saying you guys should be Muslim like us because you don't want to die, right? Just like the Christian Crusaders. So there's this is one of the reasons why I'm not so fond of Islam. But then because I'm, a white, like a European, northwestern European kind of roots.
Well, you're fond of Christianity?
Because that's like
they get the same thing.
No, of course, I'm not at all. But there's a lot of people born into my culture that they do have that kind of nostalgia and this need to defend this barbaric culture that they grew up in through no choice of their own, right? So, but because I come from the Christian horde, then people think that my anti-Muslim stance is just because whatever my Christian
because you're white, right?
It's more like that whole Enlightenment, that rationalism, whatever period of Europe that people like to talk a lot of shit about nowadays. But what was good about that was them finally rejecting all this oppressive influence of the church and all these other religions that are also oppressive. This whole thing about democracy and republicanism, whatever, that was a progressive period in history that was rightfully pushing back against these old, more reactionary, more oppressive, like just more wrong in thought kind of systems for human or human existence. Like getting rid of monarchies is a step forward as far as societal well-being. That's what's being forgotten because people are distorting history so badly. This is where I was saying, like, people are starting to become really anti-democratic and stuff. If you're considered like a liberal, if like I'm trying to be a communist, right? But then if I'm too supportive of democracy, when some of the hardliner MLs are more about we need to have like we need to like overthrow bourgeois democratic regimes, which means we need to have a more of an authoritarian, pro-dictatorship kind of mindset, and that's all well and good for obtaining power kind of thing. Except for, what are you going to do now when you have power? You're going to teach the people that authoritarian systems are better than democratic systems. We need to find a way to be critical of bourgeois democracy without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And like, just because you're supportive of democracy over dictatorship doesn't mean that you're a liberal. And I think that benefits bourgeois democracy for us to pigeonhole people like that. You know, we have to make a clear distinction that there is the democratic socialist is a different thing politically for a reason, right?
Mm.
And historically, like, Lenin and Stalin and them tried to work with the democratic socialists for a long time. And then now there's a lot of animosity because of their failures, the reasons why they couldn't work together. But that doesn't mean that we're going to go through the exact same mistakes that they did, unless we don't really know our history. Then we're more likely to make the exact same mistakes, right?
Interesting. And you guys have a Quebec sign language, by the way.
Right.
I think Jacqueline looked it up. She said that's in the French-speaking regions of Canada. They use Quebec's sign language, but American Sign Language in the English-speaking regions.
Right. Yeah. That's
interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. That's an interesting little fun fact.
Well, Quebec likes to be different like that. Because Quebec French is even different from France French. But that's probably a good thing.
Okay. So I don't know enough to maybe Rondo.
I'll agree to disagree on
maybe
that.
Come
I feel
on
like
Tuesday,
a lot of people in Africa would disagree with that.
I don't know. I haven't.
That's why there's a lot of the Hindus in India have a big problem with the Muslims in India, because there's a lot of historical battles, depending on which monarchs supported whatever Buddhism or Islam, and then these dynasties fight it out, and the religion becomes one of the things that they use to whip people into, like, their subjects. They say you need to hate the other people of the other religion. So I don't know, maybe we should stop letting them do that to us.
Maybe y'all could talk about that Tuesday, because I don't know.
But that is a fair point. As far as they did, it's not just by the sword that it was spread. It was also there is also besides there, because there's times of war and peace. You know, it's all history is not just one big long war. So there are times where, as part of the diplomacy with their neighboring states, they would allow their missionary people to come in and do their conversions voluntarily, and then they would crack down on those people when they're having disagreements, right? And as far as commerce, this is one of the things, the economics of religion is really religion would be nothing without the economics behind it. So they really do have to spread by commerce more than anything. So
I mean,
how much money does the Vatican have, right? Like, they were the church is like what created a lot of these nation states, like France and England, and like their existence was often determined on whether they were they swore allegiance to the Pope or not, kind of thing, right? So, and then like Rome would go try and destroy England if they were not supportive of the Pope. Like, that's one of the big things about the English history, is that they were, you know, in defiance of the Pope. And France was very loyal to the Pope, and Spain too, and that kind of thing. And the Dutch or whatever were also more like the Protestant Catholic divide, right? That's all about the nation state is not allowed to be disloyal to the church, or the church is above in greater importance to to the people than the nation, wherever, as far as authority. That's where a lot of people are. The theocracy is the traditional way of running a society for a lot of people. That's what they want to restore. But that's why a lot of the more progressive, the liberal people are like, well, that's going backwards to a time in history that we've already been there, done that, know what's wrong with it, right? Know what we don't want from there.
And then there's the complete opposite of those, which are the evangelicals, which is like, no, this is exactly where we should be.
It's all just part of God's plan. Change nothing.
Oh my!
But we're off on a tangent.
We're off on a tangent.
Get back to something.
Rondo wants to know if you know the first instance of Islam in Africa.
First instance of Islam in Africa.
I do. To take you to school.
No, I would appreciate you educating me on this stuff. There is large blind spots in my education here. So because I was raised in the, speaking of my bias about being raised in the Christian community, didn't really learn much about the history of Islam. Only what I've chosen to research in my own time.
I don't know the answer to it either, Rondo. Like I'm waiting for him to give us the answer because I would have. It's not even anything I've even thought of. Like I've never.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I never even thought of that. It's just like, oh, it's just here, you know.
Yeah. If I had to take a guess, I would say that it would be in Egypt after Muhammad did his whole, founding of the religion in the first place, whatever, uniting the tribes, I guess he managed or something. Then from the spread from there, it would be either Egypt or like a Somalia kind of region, right? Unless they managed to somehow start in Morocco, of all places. It just seems geographically, Egypt is the first likely place that Islam was in Africa.
So he says, Hijra. So that's kind of like a Kemet. Whatever that name is, it's been renamed. So,
because from my understanding,
I'm curious to know where that is.
Muhammad united people into this revolutionary religious movement, and then they went and like consolidated the Middle East basically by force. It's like you're either with our new thing or you're against it. So maybe I'm wrong there.
He just said no. He must be kind of busy because
it's all good.
We'll have to table it, I guess, because I don't know enough about it. I don't like talking about stuff I don't know.
It's not a good idea, right? Good way to make a fool of yourself. Good way to make content so engaging.
I can tell you when I'm ignorant about something. That doesn't mean I'm ignorant. That just means I'm ignorant on that subject, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
And then it's not to be getting out of context when we're talking about history in like 600, 700 AD. Like everyone around it's not just the Arabs that were being violent or whatever. This is the way that everybody was kind of, it was the normal behavior was like sacking your neighbors kind of thing, stealing their women and raping them kind of thing, right?
So even, BD, that's supposed to mean before death or something like that? AD versus BD. So even doing that is like rooted in Christianity, because that's like time based on Jesus, right? So
you're saying look up the first Hijra.
So I prefer ACE, like after the Common Era, or BCE before the Common Era.
Says migration to Abyssinia. I don't know if it's a good idea to click on the Wikipedia page.
Oh, Abyssinia is okay, so Egypt then.
Well, I thought Abyssinia might be more like Ethiopia. That's what I was saying. It's either going to be like Ethiopia.
Oh wait, yeah, you're right, Ethiopia.
Yeah, because the Wikipedia says migration to Abyssinia, also known as the first Hijra, was an episode in the early history of Islam the first followers of the Islamic prophet Muhammad,
Sure.
they were known as the Sahaba, or the companions, migrated from Arabia due to their persecution by the Quraysh, the ruling Arab tribal confederation of Mecca. This is what I'm saying. They were fighting the other tribes that didn't want to be a part of this new religious revolution, you know? So there might be a yes and no kind of answer, right? Because nobody talks about the Quraysh anymore, unless you probably know about them if you're born in a Muslim family. But
I didn't say anything. I was listening.
so they sought and were granted refuge in the kingdom of Aksum, an ancient Christian state. Interesting. So let's start all this history of Christians and Muslims and Jews are also entangled and intertwined. So the idea of some of them are going to eradicate the other community. We're kind of all stuck with each other. You know what I mean? As much as I might say, let's abolish all religion, I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen.
It never will. Thank you for the correction, Sean. I don't know why I thought AD meant after death, because that's just like the easiest way to put it. But in the year of our Lord, Anu Domini.
So I guess the thing about religion, though, to kind of qualify or the caveat for what we're saying is the invention of the nation state, whatever is, or the early empire, the imperial state, is what when the religion becomes the state's national religion, that's when it becomes like an imperial conversion by the sword type of thing. But until that happens, of characterizing a religion as a violent force of human nature is pretty much inaccurate, right? You sound like a dick because you are a dick. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of stuff going on in Ethiopia right now too. We should think about researching that. But we said we were going to do Vietnam next week, right? Vietnam is like, I've been reading up on Vietnam. There's a lot of stuff happening, but nobody's talking about Vietnam. So I figured we should do it.
Yeah, sounds good. I would like to learn more. It's worth understanding the subtle differences between the different communist states out there that still exist. So,
yeah.
Because I feel like people dismiss a more anti-China stance as just like a Western thing, but I'm thinking some in Vietnam might see like geopolitical reasons why it's not so much in Vietnam's best interest to be too pro-China, in that they kind of lose their sovereignty if they just end up doing China's bidding all the time. Then they need to find a way to make their own policy that works more for them, and in that case, then they have to find out in what way is supporting China's interests actually go against their own, like with the Belt and Road and stuff like that. So,
I'm a little distracted because I'm reading what he's saying in the chat. I ran off to Adesanya. Trying to find that.
So that's something that we should.
Yeah,
Thanks
hard
for
to find.
some, research. What do you call them? Like giving us some leads to look into. So appreciate that.
You know, I hate how when you're looking up stuff, how it just gives you like a pages and pages full of like the latest and greatest about what's going on. Because like I tried to look up Adesanya. Okay, well apparently there is a MMA fighter named Israel Adesanya, and I can't get past his ass to to find out what Rondo's talking about.
That's yeah. This is where we maybe need to go to libraries like back in the day. Nobody remembers how to do that, to find information that way. Everything is just put it in the search engine. That'll work.
Hi, MWP. I don't know who that is, but hello. It's a new
Nice
face
to meet you.
in a high place.
Thanks for joining us.
I do know the Negus. I am familiar with that. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying about Adesanya, there is a theory that they made the Black Panther movie, like they purposely called it the Black Panthers, not just for the hype of the term for the movie, but also so after several years, as things move on, time goes on. If somebody Googles the Black Panthers, they're going to see nothing but the movie. And the actual Black Panthers is going to be so far down on the pages that they'll be forgotten. If that makes sense what I'm saying.
There's been actually some interesting stuff about Black Panthers in the news cycle lately about, are the Panthers back? Are there people imitating the Panthers? Are there probably just some feds cosplaying?
They had to apologize
to the real group.
They had to apologize because there was like a lot of pushback. Like we talked about this, right? I feel like
we maybe touched on it in one of our marathon streams, but I might be forgetting it. So I'm thinking it's a bit suspicious. I don't know if the group has officially done a relaunch. I don't think they have. So it seems like as far as trying to get Black people on the streets for no good reasons, maybe CIA has a reason to imitate the Black Panthers right now. So.
Yeah, because I feel like we talked about this, but maybe you weren't. It might have you. I think you had to leave to be with
I might have missed this part.
Yeah, I think you might have missed that part because, the discussion kind of went like this. Why are you calling yourself the Black Panthers? Because you are riding on the notoriety of someone else. Like, what community work have you done? Like, where are you from? Like, nobody knows you, and you just gonna come out and call yourself the Black Panthers? You can't just take a name of someone and you're not qualified, but I don't know what, like, tested or what have you.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think Stoli Carmichael's niece or granddaughter or somebody sued those dudes. It was like, who gave you the authority to just be calling yourself the Black Panthers? Like, and they had to come out and apologize, and they claimed that they were given the authority, but then it was taken away from them. Because another thing we were talking about with them was like, how are you out here threatening federal agents, or they call themselves federal agents, the Gravy Seals? They're basically just, January 6ers. But how are you out here threatening them on camera, and somehow the camera just keeps following you around, but nobody showed up at your house to question you? Like, some people are getting they're getting knocks on their door from a Facebook post, just a little post. So but you're able to say all these things that you're saying, and you're good. Nobody's coming to question you about it, or
it's the problem though. There's not enough of that's like circumstantial evidence, technically, right? So this is the thing about criticizing Max Blumenthal for never outright saying that Israel should not exist. From most of his reporting, it seems like he's a pretty anti-Zionist reporter. But if he hasn't said a certain thing out loud, it's just circumstantial evidence, basically, to accuse him of being like a secret pro-Israel, like a Mossad kind of journalist, because his dad is the whole what we were talking about, like Tucker Carlson being the son of a CIA guy or whatever. So then Max Blumenthal being the same thing, or whatever. But he's been a lot. It's a bit harder to tell if he's because the whole thing about you can't just judge the son based on the sins of the father, right? Just because they're blood related doesn't mean they actually believe or collaborate with what their parents have done. But it is possible, right? It does happen a lot.
It's very
right?
possible
Kids do
because
follow in the footsteps, right?
it's very possible because did you ever see actually red
Actually,
white
is questionable, right? But we
red
can't
white and
jump to conclusions. Sorry.
what's her name? Blue wine, red white and blue wine.
Yeah,
or
Lucy,
something?
red, white, and red wine, blue moon.
Red
Blue moon, red
wine, blue
wine.
moon. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes. Shout out to Lucy. Max Blumenthal was like on this podcast, and it was fucking hilarious because the dude, it was two dudes he was talking to. Okay, one of the guys was talking shit about his dad. Max wasn't saying nothing. He was just kind of letting them go on. He wasn't touching that shit with a 10-piece, like a 10-inch pole or whatever that saying is or whatever. 10-foot pole, thank you. And the other dude mentions to him, you know that's his father, right? He's like, holy shit, that's your daddy? That shit was hilarious. And Max Blumenthal was like, I don't like to discuss my father. Oh no! Wait a minute! We can't just gloss over that shit.
Kind of need to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, we can't just gloss over. That's when he got questionable to me
because they're both public figures. You know, like it's one thing if your private life is private, but you're a journalist and he's a senator, right? And you're a journalist who talks about politics, but you don't talk about your father who's in politics. That's a red flag kind of thing, or at least an orange flag. Okay.
Y'all got me. It's in here. But yeah, it's like if you can't denounce, that could still be your father, and you could still say, "But I don't." You know, like I'm doing this work because I don't agree with my father's work, and I'm trying to like correct the wrongs or what have you know, like say something. Just I don't want to talk about it. I don't know. I'm looking at you with one eye open now.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was around the time. Just one more quick thing before. Sorry.
No worries.
I think that was around the time Aaron Mate did that Twitter post. I think he was like, oh, it was about what was going on in Gaza or something. And he was like, oh, one of my friends just asked me to get this message out. And it was like this pro-Israel type of whatever, I don't know. He got ratioed. Oh my God, they dogged the hell out of him for that. You know what I'm talking about, or you don't remember?
I don't know. I was not sure. Probably don't really know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, you can go ahead with that. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Yeah, sounds good. Because I'm seeing what people are saying in the chat, and it's hard to focus on what you're saying, and then because sometimes people say stuff, it makes you think about what else you want to say, whatever. Because there are some things about. I was going to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood and stuff, the history of it. That might be good to get into next, considering we're sort of talking about religion, the political dynamic of religion. So Jacqueline says, one of the false narratives spread by the Christian West is that Muslims are trying to force their religion onto everyone. But like they say, every accusation is a confession. Right. And that is a popular saying, but I kind of don't like that one too much because obviously not every accusation can be a confession and not every and vice versa. Like,
well, I tend to agree with her, like in my opinion.
That's like it's a saying because it's often true, right?
Right. Like Erica Kirk's on that Make Heaven. What is the name of that stupid tour? Make Heaven Crowded. The Make Heaven Crowded tour.
If you want to listen to her, you believe, I'm pretty sure that you'd be more making hell crowded, but I don't believe in either of those places. So I'm kind of immune to that sort of propaganda, you might say, or con artistry.
Well, you know, this is hell. You gotta look for yours on earth.
Yeah, I agree with what Bulla's saying. Skeptical is not the same as paranoid. Ain't nothing wrong with making sure somebody is legit. Yeah, it is just hard to. The line between skepticism and paranoia can be a bit of a fine line, and you maybe don't always know when you've crossed it. So, but that's where skepticism of paranoia is the only way to kind of, if you become paranoid and becoming skeptical of the things that you're paranoid about is the way to stop being paranoid. So, interesting relationship there.
I found what I was talking about too. I was trying to bed it first.
Now they're talking about some interesting stuff, but we'll get derailed if we go on that line too much.
Hi, Marlo World. Oh, okay. Can I? So this is. I found this on Nico House. Nico House did a. How long is this? Oh wait, that's 35 minutes. No. Maybe I could put it in the YouTube or. Maybe I could just put it in the YouTube or something.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, not the YouTube, the chat. I'll just put it in the chat. If you guys want to go back and watch it.
Yeah, I should find what next tab I want to share here. Because the Muslim Brotherhood is a very old organization, has a very long history. So kind of hard to figure out where to start, but since I called the title Muslim Brotherhood Zionist Cold War, why don't we start with unveiling the Muslim Brotherhood's Cold War era? Because I think in the modern times, trying to figure out, oh, maybe a Muslim Brotherhood's an ally of a communist or a socialist movement. Well, we should support them because they're anti-Zionist. Seems like the logical, right thing, morally right thing to do. But I don't think we're going to achieve our own objectives politically if we go backing religiously conservative political movements because they're anti-imperialist for sure, but they're ideologically opposed to our what we are trying to achieve. So in the short term, we might find benefits of working with them, but it's all about the trajectory of what our collaboration is accomplishing. So if we're creating, like helping them create Islamic revolutions, we're not really creating socialist revolutions. We're maybe making it harder for us to accomplish a socialist revolution if the people, the general population of a nation is becoming like ideologically radicalized into a religious revolutionary fervor as opposed to a secular socialist revolutionary fervor. But our problem is we have a lot of, like, the UAE and Israel and the United States and France and the UK, or whatever, these are the champions of secular society, and we know that they're a bunch of like nihilistic, imperialist, sadistic thugs, right? That's not what secularism is supposed to represent. That's why that gives credence to the religious people whose argument is that secularism is abandoning God, and the godless people will lose their moral center and their soul and everything. And so a secularism is like associated with evil, with temptation of the devil kind of thing. So because there's a lot of socialists trying to say we got to just support all the Muslims or whatever because they're fighting the US, right? But the US, pretty sure, is wily, like the CIA. They've been used. We know that they use religious extremism to their advantage. So how much are we hurting ourselves by arguing that we need to support religious fervor? You know what I mean?
I mean, aren't we supposed to be supporting an ideology, not a religion?
We're supposed to support our own views, right? As much as trying to work with other people and being flexible with their views, that's all well and good. But we're not supposed to give up on our own views.
I mean, that's what I mean by ideology. Like, if we have the same ideology, I don't care if you're secular, Muslim, Christian, Baha'i, Buddhist. I'm sure there's other ones out there. I just can't think of it at the moment.
Yeah,
but like separation of church and state type of thing.
That's the secular thing, though, because religious. That's where I'm saying I'm fine with you being religious until we have a problem because you're religious and my irreligiosity, if that's a word, right? Until the contradiction is made relevant, we can agree to disagree. But then if your religious society, like the Muslim Brotherhood, the reason why we can't really say, oh yeah, I really want to fuck with you guys because you guys hate the Zionists, right? Is because what they want to establish is a theocratic kind of thing. Society has to ultimately be in adherence with Sharia law kind of thing. That is fundamentally diametrically opposed to obtaining a socialist revolution. So how do we accomplish our goals by doing the real politic of tactically supporting the people who are trying to accomplish the polar opposite politically is what we're trying to achieve? Is it really
okay? But you're not going to agree with everybody on everything, right? Even in the same movement, right? There has to be some give and take.
Yes,
a little bit, right?
There's always there's always the hardliners and the moderates, the pragmatists, right, and ideologues. So,
I mean, when Marjorie Taylor Greene said abolish the FBI, I was like, all right, girl, let's do it. Now, after that, it's almost like the whole greater Russia versus greater India versus greater, like, okay, I'll work with you now, but then after that, my agenda is not your agenda. But this is a piece that we could do together, and then I guess we both live to fight another day. I don't know. Do we talk too slow or something? What's going on in the chat? They just be speeding us up.
Well, good point, Rondo. Maybe I should take your advice. I wouldn't even start talking about Sharia or anything like that. Y'all have stated that you do not have a good understanding of Islam, so I would stop. So,
yeah, I did you say something about Sharia?
I did say, because what I've been reading about what the Muslim Brotherhood's stated aims, their goals have been, like since the beginning, is they want to establish a society that is in conformity with Sharia law,
Okay, so, okay.
Which is not like the problem is that though that's like that's become like a political football to talk about Sharia law because
exactly because
all the Western propaganda about that being like the worst thing in the world if that was ever to happen to a nation, right? So
it's been propagandized and distorted and
except there's also a kernel of truth in that the way that the Taliban and the Wahhabi Saudis are trying to impose Sharia law is very oppressive and we should not be making excuses for that kind of wrong. A lot of Muslims would say there's wrongful interpretations of Islam within like their own, there's what they would call takfiri Muslims, the ones that are like disingenuous or whatever, pretending to be, Muslim, the kind of thing for political gain or whatever, right? So it's all complicated because it's also their subjectivity is a part of it, right? There's the Muslims have their disagreements about what Sharia law is or should be, and all the Christians on the have their disagreement what a bit. The secular people, the non-religious people have their understanding of it. Who's right at the end of the day? Who has more of a claim? Typically, we say the group themselves has more legitimacy to talk about it than anyone else. But is that really also true? So then that says atheists never have more of a rightful opinion to talk about religion than anyone any religious society because they are a member of the group themselves, you know?
Okay, but like, you could talk about it, but you got to know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. So this is why we should maybe talk about Sharia law. We've done more research on it. So.
Yeah, it's like talking about
I don't know how to answer
the
that
Talmud
question.
or whatever.
What school of thought, which hadith is the Muslim Brotherhood's Sharia use? And because they have such a long history, I'm sure within the Muslim Brotherhood they have contention over which interpretation is what the one that is their organization. Like there's a traditional what their organization upholds, and then there's always like the younger generation challenging of the traditional thought. So
and there's always some people that's going to try to bastardize what the religion is for political strategy. You know, like Republicans talk about pro-life. They weren't pro-life before. They used that as a political strategy because they weren't winning elections. It's very interesting. I think we should table it.
Well, that's exactly. We don't know how to answer the question, so we need to understand the context that we're coming from is incorrect. So we'll agree to disagree or move on. We'll table it for now because I have this article up, and I hate having a headline there that we're never actually going to read the article. So let me read a little bit.
I would I'd love for Rondo to come talk to us about it. Like we both have to do our own research.
Yeah, maybe by Tuesday next week, if you got time, Rondo, we can have a little part of Tuesday can be about this discussion. Sound like a good idea to you, or?
I'd be interested. I'm always interested in talking and learning.
Right. Yeah. I just not always wanting to make a fool of myself, but you can't be too worried about, so be it, right? If I have to, in order to learn something, I have to kind of put my foot in it, so be it, right?
Yeah.
So this is from numberanalytics.com from June 21st, 2025. AI generated, not really. So why even bother fucking putting, well, I guess maybe it is a person who got the AI to generate it. And then she says, this is my work, right? But exploring the organization's rise and influence during the Cold War in the Middle East. So I guess grain of salt with this. This is what happens when you try and research something with their modern search engines. That's what they give you. Unveiling the Muslim Brotherhood's Cold War era. The Muslim Brotherhood, one of the most influential Islamist organizations in the modern era, has a rich and complex history that spans nearly a century. Founded in 1928 by Hassan al-Banna, the Brotherhood's early years were marked by a focus on Islamic revival and social reform. However, as the organization grew and evolved, it became increasingly entangled in the regional and global politics of the Cold War era. In this article, we will delve into the history and impact of the Muslim Brotherhood during the Cold War, examining its roots, ideology, and interactions with regional and global powers. Founding of the Muslim Brotherhood. I love how everything has to be repeated. We already just sort of said that in the last paragraph. Was founded in 1928 by Hassan al-Banna, a charismatic Egyptian cleric and educator. Al-Banna's vision for the Brotherhood was centered on the idea of Islamic revival and social reform, with a focus on promoting a more authentic and rigorous interpretation of Islam in Egyptian society. The organization's early years were marked by a strong emphasis on social and charitable work, including the establishment of schools, hospitals, and other community organizations. The Brotherhood's early focus on Islamic revival and social reform was shaped by al-Banna's concerns about the impact of Western influence on Egyptian society. Al-Banna believed that the influence of Western values and culture was eroding traditional Islamic values and contributing to social and moral decay. As the organization grew, its ideology developed to incorporate a more explicit critique of Western influence and a call for the establishment of an Islamic state based on Sharia law. The Brotherhood's ideology can be summarized as follows: emphasis on the authority of the Quran and Hadith, rejection of Western influence and cultural imperialism. Pardon me if you can hear my water radiators firing up.
We can hear it. That's like the the smoke detector beep.
It'll be done in a minute or so. But I hate when that happens at nighttime. Sometimes it wakes you up.
Hmm.
So the
So
promotion.
wait, hold on, Carl.
Sorry, yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
I just didn't want you to go past it without finishing this part.
Okay. So the promotion of social justice, emphasis on the importance of Islamic education and moral reform. So I guess here's a little graph. So
It's kind of given the Black Panthers.
Well, it's an anti-colonial from the beginning. It's an anti-colonial organization because 1928 Egypt is a protectorate of the British Empire, just like Palestine. So they've been anti-colonial and anti-Zionist from the beginning. So this is something where I can definitely be like, yeah, I fuck with those guys. But then we defeat the Zionist entity, then we will end up being on the other side of we won't really be able to be allies. Like our unity can be in opposition to Israel, but they are opposed to communism. And so that's going to be a contradiction that needs to be dealt with as far as, our tactical allegiances of today. So this is why there's for someone to be concerned about the Islamic resentment of communism in the modern times, when the way that the U.S. is targeting Iran and everything, I would be immediately cast out of having anything worth saying for a lot of people, a lot of Marxists too, Marxist-Leninists, because to them it's just so simple. Like, we have to support the Iranian regime here because the U.S. regime is trying to destroy it. So all the ideological concerns that we have, those go out the window because of realpolitik. For it's pragmatism all the way down. It's where there is no ideology. It's just pragmatic allegiances with people we don't even agree with on politics, whatever. But we agree with who our enemy is, the U.S., because the U.S. is the enemy of everyone. So.
Well, not everyone. NATO seems to be all right with them.
But that's the thing. Even
Israel, they're certainly not the enemy of Israel.
Israel's the only one I feel like is feeling tight with America still. Everyone else, I think, is a little bit worried about. It was beneficial to do what America wanted before, but right now I don't know if that's working anymore. All the NATO countries, Canada, all the, like, Egypt, all these vassals. We always call them vassal states, or whatever. But if this multipolarity reality happens, we can't really think of them or call them vassal states anymore, because they won't actually be that in reality. If they do the de-dollarization thing, at what point does a vassal stop being a vassal, right? It's this Socrates paradox. At what point does a pile become a pile, right, of grains of sand?
Yeah.
So
I think they're full of shit anyway, because if they just demand that we, the treasury bonds that they hold, they could do so much by dumping those. It would really hurt us. So you could talk a good game, but are you going to back it up? Because so far, nobody's backing that shit up. They're just letting America just run amok.
Like, I would say, you'd have to you could say that they are backing up what they're saying, in that they are, like, China is dumping treasuries, but they're still holding a lot. Like, they're dumping a lot, but they've been holding so much that, so are they going to dump all of them? That's what we're waiting for them to see. If, like, they look like they're in the process of keeping their word, but they could still go back on it, right?
And they will.
Well, I think that they will. If they end up not being able to dethrone the American hegemony, then they will go back on their word. But if the opportunity presents itself, I'm pretty sure China will put America in the dustbin of history finally, once and for all, and we can all applaud that. But then who knows what happens when you get rid of the devil,
I told you your prime minister was like talking shit at the Economic World Forum.
I don't trust
Okay.
I don't trust any of that though. I think it's them trying to save their crumbling Commonwealth. I think the Commonwealth is what they're trying to think. They're trying to revive the declining the Commonwealth started to go into decline because the ending of colonialism, or so it seemed. All the colonized countries were gaining their independence, so the Commonwealth historically seemed to become made obsolete. What is its purpose now anymore? And now Canada is finding reasons to there's neo-reaction stuff that the Trump administration is very important, I think, as far as understand the stuff like what Mark Carney's speech is about, right? Because they're strengthening ties with these Gulf monarchies, right? They're strengthening the legitimacy, trying to shore up the legitimacy of the British monarchy as being a defense of democracy kind of thing. And Trump is like an anti-democratic, whatever, fascist whirlwind that changes every politics by necessity. It is amazing. It is something that can't go back from. Mark Carney saying that, admitting to the world that America has been doing all this bullying all along. Previously in Canadian foreign policy, you're not allowed to say that.
Do you agree with your prime minister, or?
I agree about reducing American influence and opening up with China.
I shouldn't have said agree. I should have said, do you believe him?
I don't believe him. That's where I don't appreciate China. I think China makes a hypocrite out of itself when it calls itself this revolutionary force, and then it's so willing to embrace and do deals with the opposite side of the political spectrum. You're going to shake hands with monarchs, right? You're going to do business with the UAE and with the British monarchy, right? And you think that doesn't delegitimize your political whatever stance.
Can I show you something?
Out of the whole thing about the communist revolution or whatever, if you're willing to be in alliance with all these corrupt Gulf monarchies and these fucking British monarchies, these European monarchs and shit, I don't know how anyone thinks that because pragmatism or whatever, I guess it makes everything okay, right? But this is where maybe I have that purity fetish problem.
Yeah. Can I show you?
Barney, the Bank of England kind of Goldman Sachs prime minister, he's deeply hypocritical, right? It's where I don't think it doesn't matter what they say. They've already proven that they couldn't be trusted a very long time ago, so there is no redemption for them.
Well, we knew that back in the day when the banks our major banks actually owned slaves and would, you use money as capital, they would use slaves as capital. So we already knew they can't be trusted. But I want you to hear this and let me see what you think about it.
This is significant, but most people probably won't understand. What Carney is saying at the World Economic Forum at Davos is that for the last 80 years, since World War II, basically the whole world has just kind of fallen behind whatever the big superpowers have said. So the superpowers are the United States, first and foremost, and then China and Russia. Mm-hmm. And all of the middle guys and all of the little countries, they would just fall in line with whatever the fortress countries said, whatever their position was. Mm-hmm. And even if it was to their own detriment, they just followed the leaders because it created peace, worldwide peace. So obviously, certain countries followed China and Russia's lead, and then other countries, our allies, followed America's lead. And as an example, Canada, for the last 40 years or so, has kind of iced out China because it was following Washington, D.C.'s lead. Washington felt China was a threat, so Canada would just follow suit to its own detriment. It would pay more for U.S. goods than negotiating a cheaper deal with China because America didn't want Canada to be dealing with China. But now what Carney has said is that, without naming the United States, that certain countries are now using their power instead of to stabilize democracy and the economic world and stabilize peace. They're using their economic power to undercut others, to coerce them, to force them, much like the coercion on Europe, saying we're going to put tariffs up to 25% against Europe if they don't give us Greenland, a sovereign nation. So basically what he's saying is this has fractured the world order. And now it's time to have a new arrangement. Instead of the superpowers just call the shot, it's time for the middle countries to form their own order, for them to create a deep web of economic connections, and for them to act in a way that protects their common interests. So that's already starting. And we saw that last week.
Okay. It's almost done. It's like more than halfway through, but I'm just curious to get your, because when she was like, and that brought about world peace. And I'm like, wait, girl, you're doing too much.
It might be an overgeneralization to say that brought about world peace, but there's maybe a kernel of truth to what she's saying. If you look at the history of the Cold War, there's this thing called the non-alignment movement. That was there was all the people that were the anti-colonial, anti-imperialist camp was like they all went on the Soviet side, and then there's the people who were just happy to be America's whatever vassal states, advancing imperialist interests. And then there's the people who decided to do the third way, trying to say, oh, neither east nor west. And so there's this whole group of countries that were doing this non-aligned movement. But in practice, there was a lot of the non-alignment people were sort of siding with the anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist camp. But they're trying not, like, there's the thing about, do we characterize the Soviet Union as the type of imperialism or not? Because they claim to be anti-imperialist, but the way that they behaved, some are, like they say, the Trotskyist camp argues that they did exhibit a kind of neo-imperialism. But that's, a lot of people say that the Trotskyists just end up being like allies, like Trotsky was an agent of the Nazis kind of thing. He ended up fleeing to the U.S. and he ended up being compromised, right, by the fucking CIA and shit. So then Stalin was justified to off him with the ice pick kind of thing. This is hard stuff to talk about without picking a side or being branded as something you're not, you know. Because I'm not super supportive of everything with Stalin, right? But you start saying Stalinism, then you're being a Trotskyist whether you like it or not, kind of thing. You're supposed to talk about Marxist-Leninism as Marxist-Leninism, not, and then the Trotskyists call Marxist-Leninism Stalinism. So if you use the word Stalinism, you're using Trotskyist terminology. So, but if you use the word Marxist-Leninist instead of Stalinist, then you're using the Stalinist terminology. You know, it gets like fucking ridiculous. So it makes the thing sense about, we'll make a pragmatic argument. Let's move past all that shit and not be so ideologically purist about everything. But then you kind of get, like, there's a need for ideology, right? For theory, you know, if we just try and stop being theoretical about stuff, then we don't understand why we're not overcoming capitalism, or it's because the theory matters as far as understanding the nature of the beast you're dealing with. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna let her finish. Jacqueline she picked up what I was putting down. But okay, here we go.
Yeah. Well, XD's got a good
when
point here.
Canada
I'm just saying we see the problems with what the SSR tried to do, how that didn't work. Like, I've been trying to talk about a little bit that you could look at the countries in Africa as examples of what did and did not work about Soviet foreign policy. But I think we can look now, there's plenty of history about China's opposite approach failing for different reasons. We need to try and learn from both. And we have that opportunity, right? But we need to actively observe and try not to be too much in an echo chamber, just imitating to get, like, whatever other people say to get approval kind of thing, or else we're not actually going to have the most dialectic analysis. So. Sorry.
Okay. So no, you're fine. Let me pull it back a little bit, and this is the rest of it.
It's already starting, and we saw that last week when Canada, for the first time in like 40 years, did a deal directly with China, a massive trade deal. So they're forming webs with other countries that now exclude the United States. It's not that they won't do business with the United States, but they're no longer going to follow U.S. policy and look out for what's in the United States' best interest, which is kind of interesting, because in him saying, make America great again, he's made China greater than they've ever been. I mean, China's got $1 trillion surplus now. They're getting all of these countries that we have alienated with our tariffs, which, by the way, Harvard, Yale, German economic studies, UK economic studies have all shown that 96% of those tariffs are being paid by US citizens and US corporations. 96%. Because what is happening is those countries are just going elsewhere. They're, instead of trading with the US and dealing with that, either the US absorbs the tariff and they keep trading with the US, or they just find deals with other countries. And so we are seeing a massive migration of business that used to come to America going to other countries. And so you wonder, are we seeing where this attitude that America first is now becoming the attitude of all of
Interesting. They didn't do the sound for once.
Oh, some. It did. I paused it because I heard it in my ear. I think, I don't know, that doom, and then
I hate that. I'm just like, every time I try and
happened.
stop it before it happens.
Hi there. Thank you.
That's an interesting point, Cobra. Good to see you. Thanks for watching.
Appreciate you. My mom's asleep, I think.
Well, it's on the counter.
Okay.
Check that.
I checked on her before the podcast. She was knocked out cold.
Well, I'm talking about the food that's on the counter. I just left everything over.
Okay. Is my nephew up? I'm sorry, 1 second. Is my nephew up?
It's all good.
He's in the back? He's right there?
I'm not doing nothing about my last.
It's all good. So
Yeah.
so
How's it
now
going?
we're seeing some of the people that were looming in the back. Cookies and Cobra in the house. I just got some lentil soup. Oh, it's so delicious.
Well, raising $3 trillion in tariffs, but spending whatever $9 trillion in order to raise that $3 trillion is not really making money, though. I haven't looked into how much the tariffs have cost the American economy, but I'll bet you it's like at least triple whatever they've earned. So it's not about the money; it's about whatever shifting the politics of the other countries. America will happily lose money to stay on top.
I gotta leave and come back real quick. I gotta check on my mom and see if she's up and get her some food.
No problem.
Real quick, I'll be right back.
But since we're talking about the tariffs and stuff, I had this I wanted to share from about the UAE, because I think the strategy here is, I think I could use TikTok as an analogy. I hope will be an effective one. What they're doing with TikTok and upscroll, I'm pretty confident that they like upscroll's the new they want to make this false exodus, whatever. Well, it's a real exodus, whatever, but like the promised land is not actually promised, right? So upscroll is the new TikTok or whatever as far as surveillance like engine that you don't really want to be on, but then they twerk the policies in such a way as to give you the carrot that makes you think that you're gonna be moving into the right place, away from the wrong place. But it's all by design. You're supposed to be going from the you're going from the boxed in pasture to the slaughterhouse, you know what I mean? So the UAE is doing all these comprehensive economic partnership agreements where, so the US market is shut off to all these people. So at least for now anyway. So in order to avoid the tariffs, they make an agreement with someone like the UAE where they get tariff-free access to the American market, because the Americans are being whatever tariff rate they offer to these countries that are happy to be like their vassal states still, or their client state might be a better term. Because one thing that's important as far as Saudi Arabia and the UAE might be in the BRICS and they're going to do the de-dollarization. Okay, well, what I'm waiting for to see if they're going to walk the walk is if they fucking de-tether their currency from the American dollar. Because until they do that, I think they're full of shit. The Saudi Arabian currency and the United Arab Emirates currency, its value is pegged to the US dollar. So if they they want to de-dollarize, the most important thing that they can do to de-dollarize would be to take that peg away. Okay, which is now why we see, I think, why China wants to create a new gold reserve system and then call it not a new gold reserve system, call it something else. So that to give an incentive for these countries to take their currency, to unpeg it from the dollar. I don't know enough about this kind of stuff to make, that's just my working theory, right? So this is from January 21st, 2026. It's just a little article that shows you all the different countries that they've made agreements with. So the UAE launched its Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement program in September 2021 as part of the Projects of the 50 initiative. This strategic program aims to strengthen the UAE's position as a global trade and logistics hub while driving economic diversification away from oil dependence. The UAE targets reaching 4 trillion dirhams in non-oil foreign trade and 800 billion dirhams in non-oil exports by 2031. As of January 2026, the UAE has concluded 32 CEPAs with countries across Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and Oceania. These agreements eliminate or reduce tariffs, remove technical barriers to trade, enhance market access, simplify customs procedures, and create investment opportunities. A CEPA is a free trade agreement between two countries designed to reduce or eliminate trade barriers, barriers to trade and investment. Unlike standard free trade agreements that focus primarily on tariff reductions, CEPAs cover a broad scope of including trade in goods and services, investment regulations, intellectual property rights, digital trade, government procurement, and dispute settlement mechanisms. So the implemented CEPAs, the ones that are already in force, UAE and India, UAE and Israel, and it tells you, if you want to pause and read these blurbs, feel free. It tells you when they were enacted. I think it's going from the oldest to the newest. So it's interesting to see there's 32 that they have enacted, I think, in force, and there's a whole bunch that are being in the process of being finalized this year that were started to the negotiations last year, and they're going to finish them this year. Canada is in the process of implementing one of these deals with the UAE. So is the European Union. So that, I think, can be understood in the context of alleged de-dollarization. This is what they're saying as far as break away from American influence. Europe and Canada are signing deals with each other instead of the US and with these Gulf monarchs and whoever else. China, apparently, right? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So UAE Israel, UAE Indonesia, Turkey, Cambodia, Georgia, Costa Rica, Turkey, my bad, yeah. Costa Rica, which I thought was
interesting.
Yeah, I thought, isn't that under U.S. control, Costa Rica, or is that's
that's Panama. That's Guam.
Yeah,
Puerto Rico.
Mauritius,
Virgin Islands, I think.
Jordan, Serbia, New Zealand, Australia. So this basically, I see all the Israel, the U.S. aligned countries, like with Europe and everything. Maybe not Georgia, whatever, so much, but this seems.
I thought the UAE and the United States was like this.
I'm just saying that a lot of these partners with the UAE, they don't seem particularly revolutionary countries if you look at what they're up to and what their history, like Chile. There's a few exceptions, but Chile now is not.
I was about to say that Chile.
I don't think so. Maybe someone want to correct me. Does Chile have a socialist government in power right now? There's Malaysia.
That's actually a good question. Am I talking about the Chile of yesteryear?
But this is the technocratic angle that is also important. I think one of the mistakes of the Soviet Union, one of the mistakes of China, both of them, as far as them having different foreign policy, like polar opposite foreign policy approaches, one thing they have in common is deep appreciation for technocracy, and social engineering, which is in the West is something that we're very much against, or at least it's more of the libertarian socialists are very much against all that technocracy, because we're supposed to be against eugenics, I thought. But I guess there are some socialists, some communists that are a little bit too open-minded to technocracy, meaning they might be a little more open to eugenics than I thought communists were. I think one of the mistakes of the Soviet Union was they were engaged in some eugenics until they changed their mind. That's one of the differences between the Soviet Union and the US, is they quickly learned from what I read that eugenics was wrong. And so there's a massive difference between Soviet eugenics and Nazi eugenics, even though it's, for most people, it's simpler to just say eugenics is eugenics, end of story. But that's a tautology, right? So it's, I'm just kind of talking about way too many things all at once. So, but my point is, the reason why I'm talking about that is because Chile is famous for the cybernetic, whatever socialist system they're trying to implement. So this is one of the dangerous roads that communists need to navigate carefully if they're going to navigate it at all. If we're going to do a technocratic experiment, we need to make sure it doesn't devolve into a eugenic dystopia, because that's one of the things people are worried about with China. It looks like a pretty, powerful, dystopic, surveillance state with they got all the drones and the attack dogs and everything. They're going to have the robots, flying cars. They're going to have the ability to have a technocratic tyranny before the West, right? So it's important for a communist to say, is that what communism is? Or should there be that have any part along the way to transition, the socialist transition to communism? Do we need a technocratic eugenic influence in there at all? But anyway, so here's the agreements. The UAE is pending entry into force. It's interesting to see who they're trying to finalize agreements with. So there's the Philippines, Nigeria, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Kenya, the Central African Republic, the Republic of Congo, Angola, South Korea, and Colombia. Those are the pending entry into force. They're already signed, so those ones are signed. And then there's the under negotiation or finalization: Japan and the EU, Morocco, Mercosur, South America, Eurasian Economic Union, which is Russia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Belarus. And I guess there are more negotiations with Armenia and Belarus separately, whatever. But this is where if this seems to be, we're wondering if the American dollar is collapsing. Where are the rats fleeing when the sinking ship or whatever? They're trying to find a new ship. I don't think we want them to accomplish these agreements. I think it's in socialist interest for the UAE's objectives to fail. Because you shouldn't make deals with monarchies, because they don't want your communist revolution to fucking succeed. I think you should be aware of that. You should not be deceiving yourself about that. I think the benefits, the harms you get from a relationship like that outweigh the benefits, which is why I guess I would be, I don't know if we're glitching here now.
No, I can hear you. That's
But
fine.
I would probably, if Mao were alive today kind of thing, I would be more supportive of his policies than this Dengist kind of technocratic policy. So you got, I don't know, you had a comment there, Abby?
No, I was just telling you weren't glitching. So,
Okay, it did circles on my end for a minute.
oh, okay. Okay.
This is my zoom in is not really working too well. It's like cutting off the things on the side. So this is a good resource, I think, as far as like when we look at what their economic behavior is. They're doing the same kind of economic dominance. That's the classic capitalist, colonial, imperialist, whatever you want to call it. It is that oppressive economic practices that we're trying to abolish. So I don't think that pragmatism with so the UAE strategy in Bangladesh: elite capture, labor control, political economic leverage. So if this is what they're doing to Bangladesh or whatever, they want to do this to all these other countries too, It's just about how, like, the smaller countries are the more weak ones. They're the more able to be dominated. They're going to have a different relationship with a country like China, because they're the smaller one, right? But they may be a small country, but they have a lot of power to dominate another country that might be bigger than them, right?
Mhm. What made you pick Bangladesh specifically?
This is just an article that I found, and I went looking into Bangladesh's relationship specifically with the UAE because they're in the same region, like in the neighborhood, right? So they definitely want to be. If you look at a map, maybe we should call up a map. Bangladesh is geographically located in a place that the UAE would be happy to exploit, right? Because they're right next door.
You're pulling up. Oh. I
And
was
there's
trying to put Bangladesh in my thing so I could look up a map, and apparently I put it in the chat.
well, I'm just gonna call up the Google map here. This stream's gone a little bit sideways. I don't really. Yeah, there we go.
Oops, sorry about that.
That's
I like
okay.
Wally too.
We can kind of do a little bit of a
This is very small.
ad. All right, am I back? I was glitching there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So
All
if you guys haven't
right.
found
Google
it yet,
Maps, I guess,
it's
is
right next to India. Oh, are you glitching? Oh, he's frozen. Oh, no, you're not.
Pakistan after Pakistan broke away from India. So it's with India, tensions between India and Pakistan right now. The UAE wants to have a lot of influence in what happens in Bangladesh in order
I'll
to
be right back.
influence both India and Pakistan, right? So another thing, actually, since we're like 2 hours in, and we're trying to make sure I covered what I missed last week. I went to talk about the UAE's relationship with the Taliban in Afghanistan there, because there's a whole interesting story developing there that might place into some context this the border dispute between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pretty sure UAE is probably heavily behind that, as much as it's the American. We always point the finger at the Americans, but the Americans get other countries to do their dirty work for them in a lot of ways, so that they have a plausible deniability there, even though they also do like their national endowment of democracy kind of, like the Americans do their influence, but there's like a multi-pronged approach, so important not to forget about the influence of the smaller nations that are working in tandem with the US. So let me see, where is I'm going to change tabs again. Where is it? Unclear future of the Muslim Brotherhood in Afghanistan. Uh-oh. There it is. So the unclear future of the Muslim Brotherhood in Afghanistan after the Taliban's return, because it's kind of interesting to try and figure out in what ways do these Islamic organizations disagree about how to create Islamic society. So kind of gives you insight on who's a good and who's a bad actor, to a degree. Following the arrival of the Taliban movement to the palace of government in Afghanistan, the Muslim Brotherhood in Kabul praised the transfer of power to the movement in a peaceful manner without bloodshed or destruction of public institutions. The Statement of Afghan Reform Society, which represents the Muslim Brotherhood in Afghanistan, August 17, 2021, praised the good and Islamic treatment of the Taliban movement and hoped that this would continue in the future. It called for the necessity of a peaceful and reasonable transition of power and demanded the participation of various political, civil, and national groups in the administration of the country. A day later, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt congratulated on August 18, 2021, the Afghan people, not the Taliban, for their victory and the liberation of their land. It expressed its support for the meetings between the Afghan political forces and parties to agree on the system and the government that is acceptable to the people of all categories. The International Union of Muslim Scholars congratulated the Afghan people and their leadership, especially in the Taliban movement, for these steps and for this new phase that has begun in Afghanistan. This is kind of an important question to ask about the relationship of the Muslim Brotherhood with the Taliban, because with the Taliban and Al Qaeda, whatever, being linked with the terrorism stuff, and then they try and link. They say that the Muslim, if you remember last week, we talked about they're designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, whether that's fair or not. Then it's kind of important to see if they've ideologically had links with the Taliban and Al Qaeda before and whatnot, to see if there is any kind of truth to what the American propaganda is at all. Because just because it's propaganda doesn't mean there's not truth there. And that's kind of what gets brushed aside, right? Whatever the Americans say is false. But the most valuable, most influential propaganda is the propaganda that uses the truth, not the lie, right? So historically, the Muslim Brotherhood preceded the emergence of the Taliban in Afghanistan, which made their relationship somewhat complicated. Prior to 2001, the Taliban dealt with the Brotherhood as an enemy, separating disbelief and faith. That's that takfiri accusation, right? It described the group's members as more dangerous to Islam than the communists, and it used to attack its members and close their associations. Despite the Brotherhood's rejection of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, which uprooted the Taliban regime, relations continued to cool down due to news of the internal Brotherhood's support for the Reform Society for the first president to cooperate with Washington, Hamid Karzai. The Afghan Ministry of Justice, under Karzai's rule, granted the Brotherhood an official license to establish the Reform Society in 2002, angering the Taliban. However, after losing power for years, the Taliban began to change its position on the Muslim Brotherhood and opened a wide door to the relationship with the Afghan Society for Reform. This appeared in the Taliban leader's visit to the Islamic preacher Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who is close to the Brotherhood, on October 6, 2020. He had previously visited Afghanistan during the Taliban's rule on February 26, 2001, as part of Islamic delegations to persuade them to stop destroying two ancient statues of Buddha, but the movement rejected this request. Following the recent meeting of the Taliban delegation with al-Qaradawi in 2020, the Taliban praised Sheikh al-Qaradawi and described him as the godfather of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Taliban delegation in the Qatari capital Doha also visited Ismail Haniyeh, head of the political bureau of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas, which is affiliated with the Brotherhood, which confirms the new positive attitude of the Taliban towards the Brotherhood. So this gets very confusing when you're trying to figure out what side you're supposed to be on, because there's that, if you remember, there's this accusation that Hamas was like started off or founded by the Muslim Brotherhood, and then apparently Israel and Netanyahu facilitated Hamas's rise to power, right, in order to weaken the secular Fatah. So that's been like part of the narrative the whole time. I'm pretty sure there's truth to that. It's not denied, right? It's just the significance of it is what's questioned, right? So at the end of the day, like these, as much as they're anti-Zionist or whatever, it's like this thing about, you remember that thing that Shahid Bolson was saying about Iran and Israel, even though they're hardcore enemies, like for life, they somehow seem to benefit from this relationship through their opposition. Like,
I vaguely remember it.
this is like sticking in my mind, right? And you compare the way that the US and the Soviet Union, they had that same kind of a relationship where, because they forced the rest of the world into two camps, just by being apparently allegedly opposed to each other, they managed to dominate the world between the two. So it actually became beneficial to have this enemy that you can point to and blame everything on, so that any criticism, that internal criticism your society has, you can say, well, we have to, oppose the evil Americans, so you're going to have to just take what we give you, sorry. That's why you don't get to have socialism yet, because we're still fighting the enemy. And then if it's a perpetual fight that's never going to end, because we know the Americans don't actually start wars to win wars, they just want perpetual war to profit from it.
Mhm.
So if the ideological weakening through pragmatism happens, eventually what we thought was the right side betrays us, because they embrace this nihilistic mentality of there is endless profit to be made as long as we make sure the conflict is endless.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
important for us to make sure that our leaders are actually still following what they say, that like the thing that we decided to follow, right?
Yes, I do remember him talking about it. I just don't remember
Yeah.
I don't remember all the details of it, but it was very interesting. And that's basically kind of what he was saying, is like they kind of need each other. Almost like, remember I was telling you earlier, like about the left versus right in our country, in America. It's like, this is why we can't have socialism. Like they need us to fight left versus right, so we don't get the things that we were asking for, like that we've been asking for. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I'm gonna see if I could find it. Maybe I could play it on the way out,
Yeah.
or we could play it and talk about it a little bit, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I don't know. I missed a whole lot of whatever you guys been talking about in the chat. Sorry, but hope you guys are having a good conversation.
How Dubai is like, they've been talking about how Dubai is like a fake city. Like it's propped up to be more than what it is, and how it is kind of interesting how they have all those Lamborghinis and Ferraris and stuff like that, and they just leave them.
Yeah, they make these little like oases in the desert, right? They make these glorious
To
looking
collect sand,
cities.
to
Then
collect dust.
Right, but then the rest of the country, if you ever actually get around to seeing it, is just a complete shithole, because they don't actually care about any people or environment.
Right. Isn't Dubai the country? Yeah, the country that like was coercing people to come work there, but then they were taking their passports
For
and
like
they
the
have
World
them.
Cup, building a big stadium.
It's almost.
Yeah.
It's like they have them
Dubai,
in like a
Doha, Abu
concentration camp or
Dhabi.
something.
Yeah, all these countries, that's how they treat labor. That's where I'm saying you kind of betray yourself as a Marxist when you make pragmatic alignments with these kinds of nation states, but you abandon the proletariat of the working class. We're supposed to working class of the world unite, but instead of uniting with the working class, what we're doing is uniting with the ruling class that is oppressing that working class for pragmatic reasons. So you go ahead and defend it, right? That's not my project, right? But
so I found what I was looking for. Let me share it. I did something. Here we go. Okay, so this is basically like the Iran and Israel need each other type thing.
Oh, okay.
But this is
like a
talking
little
about
bit of
the.
a comedy skit of what we were talking about, how they actually benefit
It's
each other.
actually not. It's actually not a comedy skit, and it's not talking about Iran and Israel. It's the same concept, but with red and blue in America. Okay, so here we go.
I hope you'll let me explain, because as we navigate the tricky intersectional ethics of the upcoming 2024 election and beyond, it's important that we begin to understand this in our bones. 50 years ago, the U.S. had two political parties, Republicans and Democrats, and both had genuine public support, and both platforms held some public appeal. And then the right wing realized that there was unimaginable money to be made from corporate campaign funding. So they abandoned their entire platform and dedicated themselves completely to allowing the exploitation of the environment and the working class to give every single penny to the ultra-rich. Paid really well, but there was no way they were going to win elections with that as a platform, because it amounted to a giant middle finger to the working class and their voter base. So they needed to mobilize a new voter base. They looked at a few options and settled on evangelical fundamentalist Christians who were previously pretty apolitical. In order to buy their votes, the Republican Party turned on a dime in the 1980s and became rabidly pro-life. Before this, the Republicans were openly pro-choice because abortion is a personal right, and they were the party advocating personal rights. This marked the start of the modern culture wars, where the right invents boogeymen to terrify their base into ignoring the fact that their entire platform is basically steal all your money and give it to the rich, while destroying the environment we live in. The Democrats quickly followed suit, starting with Clinton. They also abandoned any actual representation of their base for corporate cash grabs, including massively lucrative arms deals and warmongering, in order to funnel billions through the Pentagon into their corporate funders' pockets. So the only two major political parties in the most powerful country in the history of the world both completely sold out to corporate interests some 30 to 40 years ago, which has led to an ever-widening gap between public opinion and legislation. For example, polling shows that some 70% of Americans have wanted some form of universal health care for decades, but it's barred from even being seriously discussed. Citizens of the U.S. are shockingly aligned on most major issues. We all want the rich to pay taxes, not to watch our neighbors and families die from easily preventable medical issues, living wages, fair elections, breathable air, and not bombing of babies. Corporations want the exact opposite, or more accurately, they want the record-breaking profits they can extract from the opposite. This creates a real quandary for both Republicans and Democrats alike. How do you continue to get votes while aggressively working against everything your voters want? You already know the answer. They stage a farce where they pretend to be bitter enemies, and like any abuser, they both claim that they are the only ones who can keep you safe from the other. The Republicans pretend that they are the only thing preventing straight white Christians from being hunted for sport by hordes of black and brown trans drug dealers screaming pronouns and making up new genders. The Democrats pretend that they are the only ones who can save you from the coal-guzzling fascists literally storming the Capitol. The fact that one boogeyman is totally fictional and the other is very real doesn't change their tactical exploitation and the presentation of themselves as your only hope at all. And they've gotten really good at this dance. They do a great job at it now. They look genuinely enraged at each other as they denounce the other side of the aisle, while all of them vote unanimously for the same tax cuts for the rich and bloated military budgets and genocides that line their funders' pockets. The Republicans have it easy. Their platform of culture war has no relationship to their corporate funders, so when they get into office, they can do most of what they say they will. They'll criminalize abortion, defund social services, cut taxes, but only on the rich, never for you, institute a brutal police state, terrorize immigrants and LGBTQ people. The Democrats have a real problem, though. Their nominal platform is at odds with their corporate sponsors, so they do the only logical thing from that position. They intentionally lose. Every time they make a catch, win an election, they intentionally fumble the ball. We're all so used to seeing this farcical dance that we can't even really register it anymore, but the Democrats have had the Senate, House, and presidency simultaneously multiple times in the last few decades. At any one of those times, they could have actually made change. They could have codified Roe versus Wade. They could have passed legislation eliminating all student debt. They could have cut military spending, taxed the rich, passed universal health care. They could have capped emissions and maintained a livable environment. Our country and world could be very, very different than it is. It really doesn't have to be like this. But if they did those things, they would then gain massive public support and actually run the country, but they would lose all their corporate funding. So that's not actually what they want. So the role of the Democrats in the current system is to intentionally...
Does that start over
Just
there?
bad cookies. I've been saying this for years.
That's a good video. Making some good points there. This is where I wonder about the consequence of, because I hear a lot about this in the independent media, like it's the partisan people. They just want everything has to be left versus right, where they just don't understand reality that way. That's like to me, it's a libertarian talking point, and they're on the right, whether they acknowledge it or not. And so then, as when I try and frame things in a left-right communist perspective, the left is communism for me and right is capitalism. But then if they're saying that framing things in a left-right divide is what's keeping us stuck here, then if the libertarians are right, we need to stop trying to be communists, stop trying to tell people to be leftists, stop fighting capitalism, and just let it ride, whatever. Go with the flow. It'll all be fine. And I'm thinking that would be a fucking disaster. We actually did that.
Oh, did you see the?
But I'll be partisan. I'm too partisan or whatever. You're just playing team sports or whatever. If you disagree, whatever. Maybe there's something wrong with us trying to be like Marx never tried to be a leftist. He was trying to say like if he were alive today, he probably wouldn't call himself a leftist, right? But then I would think it would be right to put him on the left of the political spectrum, because the reactionary forces or whatever are the supporting of monarchy, supporting of bourgeois imperialism stuff, right? So that should be the right.
I wanted you to see where I got this from. It's a page called Grouchy Socialist Rides Again.
Right. But I mean, as much as they are a joke, we're a joke to them. And as long as we're a joke to them and they're a joke to us, and neither of us are gonna, like, Libertarian Party ain't anywhere near power, right? What are they doing? They try and bet on someone like Peter Thiel to be their libertarian hero, and then he goes and betrays them, right? So, but what did socialists do? Communists, right? We bet on someone like Assad to be our hero, even though they're not even a fucking communist. And then it blows up in our face, and we go, oh, whoops. Guess pragmatism didn't fucking work for us, right? Or Maduro, even. You put all your faith in him, but then even if he was like as genuine as can be, he still got kidnapped. He's still taken off the board, whether you like it or not. You tactically, whatever, didn't maybe place your chips under the right bet, or whatever, in the roulette spin, right? That's the thing about being a realist, right? If you really want to play the realist game, maybe I'm being more of a realist than you are, more of a pragmatic person than you are, to admit that placing our faith in these, whatever, in China to save the day kind of thing, even though that's what they say, that's not what they're doing, whatever. But when they make videos every day about how China did so great about this, China did so great about that, whatever, it sounds like you're waiting for them to come save the day.
You got some beef with China, boy.
My problem with China is that, like, if you don't think that they're like representative of like revolutionary communism today, then you're like not allowed to be part of the communist movement, because like real communists support China today, bro. And it's like there's all kinds of reasons to criticize China or whatever. Mostly the fact that they're accomplishing the technocratic dreams that the Americans wish that they could right now. And that's not exactly because they're in that Cold War with America, right? And so that's what I'm saying is we need to maybe recognize this, like this Manichaean dualism, right? This good versus evil trope. China's good, America's evil. So obviously it's right. It's too simplistic, and that's propaganda that works on us or whatever. As we can see, where when we let them play this good cop, bad cop, whatever game against us, the working class does not achieve revolution. Okay, everyone likes to focus on China has like eradicated all this absolute poverty, right? But relative poverty, when you look at that metric, that's a whole different story, right? The wealth gap is widening again in China. That's supposed to be the main thing that we're trying to like eliminate, right? We want to eliminate relative poverty as well as absolute poverty. Because if you don't, then you stop doing the class struggle. You're saying it's fine for there to be a relative, to be stratification of wealth, division into status, right?
So I think what's really interesting about this is like the strategy has remained the same, right? Like whether you're looking at a micro level, like blue versus red in America, or a macro level like Israel versus Iran. You know what I mean? Like the strategy doesn't change.
It's the universal
but how are we still not recognizing it?
Right, because that's funny that I'm glad you mentioned that, because if we're adhering to our orthodox Marxist theory, we could recognize the universal in the particular. But if we reject that kind of stuff, every particular, whatever, there is no universal. There's like a postmodernist abandonment of objective truth, right? There is no universal anymore. All particulars, whatever, are unique and need to be done in their own way.
There is a little bit of gaslighting that happens, though. Like, okay, how do they not recognize that in, say, America? Okay, we are being told or tried to, we're being told that most of America is in the middle. If you go too far right or too far left, you're gonna miss a lot of people. Like a lot of people aren't going to support you. When that's really like the biggest lie. Most Americans are pretty clear about some of the stuff that they want in America, and it ain't from the middle. It's from the left, mainly. Like even people on the right that don't really have an understanding of what is communism, what is socialism. Like for them, it's like if you're not a Republican, communist, socialist, but they could agree. I want health care. You know what I mean? Like I want.
That's the thing about Americans support socialism until you call it socialism, and then
right, exactly.
So then, what that imply about when people say the left is dead?
Remember when I think I texted you?
There's more leftists than anything, but then nobody even recognizes themselves as leftists, right? But that's what they are.
Remember how we went on Troop Zone's channel and they were trying to clown us about, because they're like, we capitalists over here, baby. And
for yourself, right?
And the more I talked to them, I think I texted you. I said, hey, you'd be surprised how many socialists over here that they don't even realize they're socialists. Like
that's the tricky thing, though, because when you say that to somebody, then they might appreciate you calling to their attention that they might have some alignment with something they didn't realize, or they might kind of be reactionary to hearing that. They might go, no, I'm not. And then they would go out of their way to look to find what might be socialist in their thought and to eliminate it in order to conform with the in-group that is accepted instead of being cast as a pariah with the rest of the people in the out-group.
So, I think it was episode 2 of the open discussion, and we had a new person come over here, and I was like, oh, he was like, yeah, I know you from Troop Zone's channel, and I hear you talk about, how you're socialist. So I had to look up your channel because, you don't find that many people that will just outwardly say that, and I just wanted to have a conversation with you. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's kind of cool. And that's why I outwardly say that.
There's a lot of people who say it to our benefit, to not like people who would say, because we're everyone agrees with socialism until you say the word out loud, it's probably better tactically to be covert all the time, to not admit to anyone that you're actually socialist, and then just kind of get the influence into people's minds covertly. But at some point, that all that work is going to amount to nothing unless you can make a shift into the overt. You have to be able to show your enemy what you look like or whatever, so that you can show your allies what you look like or whatever. You have to be able to, and this is especially for religious people too, whatever. If you're really authentic about getting right with God before you pass and everything, you have to be open about who you are to the people around and like openly like around you, because that's deceit, right? And so you have to justify that God says that this is why I have to be deceitful, right? That's why I skip all that or whatever and say you failed to prove the existence of God, so I'm not going to have to waste my time with making sure that the potentially real omnipotent force or whatever might agree or disagree with what I'm saying. But I still, for the people or whatever, I still think integrity and honesty is the most important thing for us, because otherwise we open the door to all that hypocrisy and backstabbing.
I'm not laughing at you. Cobra just made an interesting point, and I thought it was funny.
I see
You
it.
are all over the place. What country was that? I forget what country. They're like, you mean to tell me you pay property taxes once and you don't have to pay them anymore again, ever? And it was something else, like, oh, once you register your vehicle, you don't have to keep like renewing the registration every year or two, whatever. I can't remember what country they were talking about.
You know what a girl said on social media? He said, "Why I gotta keep paying for my ID? I'm the same person."
Black Life said, "Did you hear?"
Yeah.
He said, "I'm not gonna change. It's me."
I gotta pay for this
Why I gotta
ID.
keep paying for ID? I'm the same motherfucker.
No, but everyone is a ship of Theseus. So as the reason, like literally, if you don't get a new ID, a lot of people's appearance changes over time. They might not be able to identify you anymore, especially if you change your hairstyle and stuff.
That's not her.
but I think that the renewal is like, it's way too often, I believe. I mean,
Every 5 years or something.
I mean, this black don't crack. I don't need to come back up here. I look the same.
I've looked the same pretty much my whole life. Just the facial hair grew in a little bit. That's the only difference.
I mean, you could change your hair color. You could get a perm. You could do all kinds of things that make you not look like who you are. So.
Well, you could get plastic surgery even, and not even to try and hide your anything, just because that's what you wanted and it will change you.
You can get plastic surgery. Because I know Nene Leakes don't look like the same person.
Get a Botox injection. All of a sudden,
if you know, you know.
It says African American. You're a Caucasian.
No, she look like white chicks now. Remember that movie, White Chicks?
Yeah, that's a funny movie.
I've actually never seen it.
I thought that they looked like one of Rich Dog.
That's like a modern classic, I would say.
Yeah. Well, anyway, do we have any other? Because it's getting late. I gotta, the little baby I was babysitting today. That's actually, the baby I usually have.
Yeah.
That's actually his cousin.
Okay.
And he's like, I know I'm cheating on my little man. I'm gonna have to confess to him.
I can't wait to see.
I'm gonna have to confess.
Better do it sooner rather than later.
Right. And I asked the grandma, I'm like, how does K3 like his little cousin? She said, girl, you don't fuck with him. I said, what?
That's how you treat him.
He just be looking at him like, why is he here?
That's exactly how you treat that.
No, I didn't.
Competition for resources.
Why is he here?
Well, he's coming back tomorrow, but Black Life was laughing at me today because I would always, what is that beeping? That's outside?
Oh, it's a car horn. Yeah.
Oh, okay. She would always, he cried a lot in the beginning, and she's like, if you don't stop all that goddamn crying, what's going on? And I said, you leave him alone. That's a baby. And sticking up for my man. And then here comes his cousin today, and I was like, why you crying?
What happened to the love is what I'm saying. The compassion.
It ain't my boy.
Oh, she's in that minute.
It ain't my boy.
I know.
It ain't the original.
Oh, you gotta develop that bond. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I gotta go to bed early because he's coming early in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I maybe didn't get to cover things, certain things as much as I wanted, but I feel like to try and jump back into it now is feels like the stream might have kind of run its course a bit. So, because I wanted to talk a bit about the UAE's relationship with this with the Taliban here, because I think in September or October, the Taliban leader, the supreme leader guy, he tried to shut down the internet And it's from what I was reading, he wanted to make it like a permanent shutdown because he's like super ultra far right reactionary. In order for his vision of an perfect Islamic society is like all not just modern influence or not just Western influence, but modern influence needs to be rejected. And we need to go back like to the 7th century because that was the perfect time, right? So he's trying to block out the internet, and then because we live in a modern world and you can't go back in history like that, it's completely irrational. Whatever. There was tension with him and the leadership underneath him about you need to restore the internet because like banking services and shit need to function. The country will cease to exist if you cut it off from the internet, which is a hard reality for some religious fundamentalists to have to deal with. Some of this Western influence you're so terrified about, whatever, is here to stay. You're not going to be able to purge it from your society anymore, you know? So, but my reason why I bring that up is the UAE backed guy in the Taliban is the one who was kind of like getting him to reverse his decision, and then that sort of sets a precedent. Like the supreme leader's not supreme because he's maybe willing to take orders from someone else in a sense, right? So there is a power struggle going on. And when you look at how the UAE cast themselves as like the secularist versus the Islamist on the world stage, that would carry serious implications for the nature of the Taliban, right? Because things change. We're like in our minds, the Taliban is this extremist, right, like religious, orthodox, whatever organization. But if a more progressive, modernist, secularist, whatever leadership comes in power, that would be a different kind of beast, right?
It's like it depends on who you talk to, right? Because Hamas is supposed to be this, like terrorist organization. And I'm like, wait, weren't they legally elected? Like what?
Right. But of course, I'm glad you say this though, because also I'm talking about this like the UAE, like as if they're the secularist, whatever alternative to the Islamic Jihad. But this guy, the UAE backed guy, is I don't know if this article talks about it. They see him like the godfather of suicide bombing. That's his role, right? He's like the leader of the suicide bomb squad. Okay, that's your fucking secular alternative. How do you get them to do their suicide bombing? You promise them what? 72 virgins in heaven? So that's not secular, right? So it's all about realpolitik or whatever, Machiavellian, nihilistic, or whatever, opportunism, which is something that Marx was always against, opportunism, right? Abu Dhabi's quiet engagement in Afghanistan may ease Taliban isolation. While Qatar has been more recognizable in Afghanistan-related diplomacy in recent years, the UAE has been discreetly developing inroads in the country. It's from March 26, 2025. Bit old, but still good. For nearly a decade, international diplomacy concerning Afghanistan was mainly mediated by Qatar. Yet since the Taliban rolled into Kabul in August 2021, leading figures from the movement have made a string of high-profile visits to another key Gulf power broker, the United Arab Emirates. Their warm reception by the Emirati authorities suggests that Abu Dhabi is coming to rival Doha as a venue for diplomacy and mediation between world powers and Afghanistan's new de facto rulers, who are seeking international legitimacy and to broaden outside influence in Afghan affairs. The Emirati strategy fits into a broader pattern that has seen the UAE emerge as a proactive geopolitical actor in the Middle East and beyond, manifested in Abu Dhabi's growing engagement in the political, economic, and logistical spheres, particularly with states on the periphery of the Middle East. Afghanistan is a case in point. The UAE first became involved in Afghanistan during the Afghan Jihad against the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and was one of the 3 countries to diplomatically recognize the first Taliban government in the 1990s. After September 11, 2001, and the American-led invasion of Afghanistan, the UAE recognized the new Afghan government and sent troops to train its security forces. However, Abu Dhabi was also eager to be the venue of later U.S. Taliban negotiations and did indeed host one round of these talks. Yet Taliban negotiators subsequently refused to reconvene in the UAE or Saudi Arabia, citing pressure from the leadership of both Gulf states to hold direct negotiations with the Afghan government. So because the UAE sided with the American puppet government, the Taliban was like, fuck you guys. And now that the puppet government's completely gone, and there's no hope of them ever being installed in power, the UAE was like, hey, Taliban, we love you guys, remember? So this effectively ended the limited Saudi and Emirati involvement in the Afghan peace process. Since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, the Emirati government has adopted a pragmatic approach towards the country's new rulers. The Taliban leadership has reciprocated, for example, with its decision to accept the bid of the UAE state-linked GAAC holding to run Afghanistan's 3 main airports. So this is the sort of thing about who won and who lost the war in Afghanistan, because it looks like America got their ass kicked when they had that humiliating way that they left, just like they had to leave Vietnam. But who actually won? When when Afghanistan, the Taliban leadership it's like a Pyrrhic victory, right? Their country's so destroyed that no matter what they want, they have to accept bids from the people that they were previously considered their enemies. So, yeah. It was notable that a rival joint Qatari-Turkish bid fell through due to a dispute with Turkey over the creation of special security zones run solely by Turkish security contractors. The availability of the more politically feasible Emirati option further gave the Taliban an opportunity to rehabilitate ties with the Gulf state and also to balance Qatar's role in the country. The agreement also clearly signals that the Emirati government no longer views the Taliban as a pariah regime. Also, I mentioned a while ago, like a couple months ago, we talked about the Afghanistan. Israel is trying to normalize ties with the Afghanistan government, with the Taliban. So a lot of change is happening. That's very important to recognize what is happening, but do we understand it yet? I think we need to wait for it to finish happening in order to understand it. But by then, it's too late to change anything about it, right? So while Abu Dhabi has remained critical of the Afghan administration's repressive policies vis-a-vis women and their right to work and education, which is completely empty and hypocritical because they have no respect for people's right to work and education because their way that they use their migrant workforce, which is full of women. Anyway, this has not prevented UAE Taliban ties from developing further. In August 2024, for example, the UAE accepted the credentials of an ambassador from the Taliban, becoming only the second country in the world after China to do so. I guess I'm just going to keep going because there's some stuff in here that's this Haqqani guy is what I'm trying to get to. This is the more important stuff. I don't want to miss anything relevant. So the Taliban's quest for legitimacy. This unique evolution of bilateral ties owes to a mix of geopolitical, economic, and political motivations on both sides. 3 years since its return to Kabul, the Taliban remains diplomatically isolated. It has been attempting to engage with multiple foreign actors in order to gain political legitimacy, refraining from showing hostility to any international actor besides Pakistan. A strong bilateral relationship with the UAE promises to bring political and economic dividends. There is also a huge Afghan expatriate community in the UAE, which functions, this is important, I think, that there's a huge Afghan expatriate community in the UAE, which functions as a major source of the remittances that are vital to Afghan's economy. There was a huge expatriate community in Iran, but Iran deported a shit ton of them. So it's kind of important to recognize where the diasporas are in the world. Many hail from, that was also as far as why, like my interest in UAE and the Bangladesh is because the Bangladeshis are one of the groups of people they use for their migrant workers, right?
I must have rewound it.
What's up? I don't know if shot my shirt.
Rewound your show. I thought you was just on.
Well, it sounds like she just, I don't know.
Hello.
I don't think they're talking.
No, yeah. I see you got your kicks on.
I'm gonna mute Abby's mic there for a sec. I think they're just talking with the baby there or something. So there's a huge Afghan expatriate community in the UAE, which functions as a major source of the remittances that are vital to Afghanistan's economy. Many hail from Taliban strongholds in Afghanistan's south and southeast. The UAE had stopped issuing new visas to Afghans, but an agreement in June 2024 for resumption of visa issuance showed that the Taliban's efforts to engage with the UAE were bearing fruit. Improved ties would also pave the way for the sizable Afghan business community based in the Emirates, with billions of assets, to start investing back home. Notably, this is in stark contrast to Qatar, which hosts few Afghans and has few economic linkages to the country. The Taliban's relationship with the UAE is somewhat complicated by a power struggle between different factions of the movement. The group's Kandahar-based supreme leader, Mullah Hibatullah Akhundzada, has clashed with rivals in Kabul, notably Interior Minister Sirayuddin Haqqani, who is also head of the semi-autonomous Taliban faction known as the Haqqani Network. The Haqqani Network is the suicide bombers I was talking about. This tussle was reflected in the appointment of an Akhundzada ally as governor of Khost province, considered a Haqqani stronghold. Against this backdrop, Haqqani's trips to meet top Emirati officials in the UAE, despite UN Security Council sanctions against him, this Haqqani guy is just like Jolani. If you guys know the Syrian Al-Qaeda, whatever ISIS leader that they installed as the leader of Syria now, the new puppet Zelensky of Syria. They had a $10 million bounty of American government because he was a terrorist, according to the American government. But now they were happy to collaborate and work with him to install him as a puppet leader of their regime. So I get this vibe from this Haqqani guy. I think I would say Haqqani is Jelani, right? But you should be careful talking about people like this or whatever. You might not live to tell too many tales anymore. But I feel like I don't know. I don't think I'm much of a threat to anyone. But knock on wood.
I heard that little swagger.
Let me just finish up here, because I'm sorry I'm doing all the talking again. So.
No, I had to walk away for a second. So
yeah,
thank
no
you
worries.
for holding it down.
So against this backdrop, Haqqani's trips to meet top Emirati officials in the UAE, despite UN Security Council sanctions against him, reflect an attempt to increase his domestic political stature and to court external patronage. This Haqqani guy also, I was reading, I don't think it's in this article, but I was telling you that they shut down the internet, whatever. The other thing that Supreme Leader, this Akhundzada guy, he's banning, like, you're not allowed to film in Afghanistan, according to him. Like, no, because the women's faces aren't supposed to be seen or some excuse. Like, I don't know exactly what reasoning is, but apparently no one's allowed to record video or take pictures in Afghanistan anymore. And this Haqqani guy is defying the order, posting whatever pictures and video and stuff, which you're not supposed to be allowed to do. That's supposed to be against whatever morality law kind of thing, right? So just kind of worth mentioning about this, like what's happening here, right? So against this backdrop, yeah, I read that. Despite the UN Security Council sanctions against him, reflect an attempt to increase his domestic political stature and to court external patrons. It is also worth mentioning that many Afghans in the UAE hail from the rural southeast of Afghanistan, where the Haqqanis are particularly strong. It is also notable that the Emirati leadership has engaged with Sirayuddin's father and the network's founder, Jalaluddin Haqqani, during the Afghan Jihad. The group gradually developed a fundraising network in the UAE, but after 9/11, these activities took a downturn. I wonder why. And in 2014, Emirati authorities blacklisted the group. Nevertheless, the Taliban's current ambassador to the UAE is also a Haqqani, reflecting the personalized nature of these relationships. So from an Emirati perspective, this rather pragmatic engagement with the Taliban remains important for multiple reasons. Leveraging its economic clout and old ties, the UAE has already been able to gain considerable political capital in Afghanistan. Relationships with the Haqqanis and the group's criticism of the Taliban's hardline emir provides the UAE with a critical link to a pragmatic, yet powerful entity within the Afghan government. Moreover, the Haqqanis are a faction that had not been on the radar of Qatar, which had facilitated negotiations between U.S. and the Taliban for the American exit from Afghanistan.
Pause.
Okay.
Good night, Jacqueline.
Oh, good night, Jacqueline.
Sweet dreams.
Thanks for sticking with us, and
Yes,
we'll see you next
we're almost
or
done.
Tuesday,
'Cause
I guess. Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna have to go to sleep
yeah.
early.
We'll probably wrap up
I mean,
here.
I
don't know if we
didn't
need
get to
finish the article, but
I didn't get to hear everything, but it's like, what did you think was going to happen after you left Afghanistan so devastated? And somebody has to fill that void because they need to rebuild themselves, and they're probably scared to do it alone. So somebody was going to swoop in there.
yeah. Well,
Duh.
it's something I think it's maybe a hot take or whatever, but it's like something that shouldn't be a quiet part out loud, but maybe is whatever. The Taliban's political ideology is doomed to fail. It was always doomed to fail. It's too repressive. It's too reactionary. It's too 7th century. Everyone knew that. So whatever backing of them was for pragmatic, Machiavellian, realpolitik reasons. And so that'll keep it alive for a while, but eventually it's got to collapse because it's just not suitable for the modern world, right? But
Shucks. And this just reminds me of something Jacqueline said earlier. It was a really good statement and question. Too bad she's gone now.
that's all good.
I'm gonna go find it. Okay.
Yeah, we can still share her comment for the rest of the people still watching, and in case she
it was really
finishes
good.
watching it later.
Let's see. Here it is. That's right. Okay, here we go. So she says, perhaps the attraction of communism is that it's revolutionary, but if the US and the UK adopt communism as the official ideology, then isn't there a danger that after a while it's no longer revolutionary but becomes part of the establishment? I thought that was interesting. What made me think of that about that? Oh, because when you have people that are or a group that's trying to rule you by iron fist, you're bound to have some type of revolution happen because it's not a practical. Well, for the masses, I don't think it's that very practical to live under that kind of.
Right. While the Taliban's out of power and it's a fight against the occupying American imperialist whatever force, then they can be the anti-colonial struggle, even if they're completely backward with what they want, with the vision of society they want to implement. They can be a rallying force for like revolutionary activity until they get into power. And then when they get into power and they have to implement, like there is this like that is a good lesson for us to learn too. It's something that happened with the Soviet Union. They're also completely revolutionary at the beginning of the Soviet experiment, but then once they had power, they weren't really like fighting against the whatever imperialist occupier, right? Then
so the revolution became more.
Then they became more and more bureaucratic, and then they became an establishment that needed. Then the revolutionary force needed to fight against the stagnating bureaucracy, pretending to be revolutionary, right? I think that's what we can kind of even the Marxist-Leninists and the Trotskyists can both agree that the ending stage of the Soviet Union was a bureaucratic shadow, whatever, imitation of a revolutionary force, right? They don't like to agree on stuff. They would rather have an eternal good versus evil Manichaean dialogue, right?
Interesting.
And actually, it was interesting. Extra Bulla, as far as going back and looking at the comments, he's saying something about, because we're talking about the Manichaean good versus evil, but he brought in the fact that it's the lesser of two evils argument at the same time, bad cop versus worse cop.
Yeah, bad cop versus worse cop. Yeah.
China's not actually the good cop. China's the bad cop, but America's the worst cop. Yeah. Right? So it ends up being, when we talk about domestic U.S. politics, that particular versus the universal here, right? So everyone was like no matter who you're talking to in the socialist circles, they're all about the lesser of two evils is the stupid trick that we shouldn't be falling for. How does this keep working on us? We should be smarter than that. But now we want to fall back into the lesser of two evils when it's about China versus America. So are we gonna acknowledge hypocrisy there, or are we gonna say, oh, no, that's not hypocrisy. That's something different. That this is not lesser of two evils, right?
Yes, there's a lot of rabbit hole discussions going on.
Yeah,
Rondo.
well, that's what happened when you get
You
interested,
see
like learning
Rondo's
stuff.
comment?
Then you get more questions than answers, right?
You're the communist, so I'm gonna let you take this one.
Okay, what if communism is just old German white men telling us how they think the planet's resources should be managed, which is not too much different than the capitalist? What if some of these critiques about communism and Eurocentrism, there's kernels of truth? And if that there is truth there, then the way for a communist to overcome that is to acknowledge it instead of deny it. Because denialism isn't really very helpful for anybody for any reason, except for to keep you kicking the can down the road. Whatever, ostrich policy. I like that term too. There's a lot of governments that are engaged in ostrich policies, which is burying your head in the sand, not ready to face reality. So.
Okay, because I was about to say, what the hell is that? Okay, I've never heard that before.
No, I just came across that one this last week. It's where I love learning new terms. The nerd in me. But I was hoping to try and cover
another one. Oh, the other term I heard was imperialistic. No, the imperialist boomerang.
I've been hearing that going around lately.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, where did that come from?
That's when
So
with
I don't know if it's a new term coined.
It's not so much a new term, but it's
coming back.
Gaining, well, it's got relevance as far as with the ICE protests and killings. This is one way to describe that is the imperialist boomerang. It's the chickens coming home to roost, right? As far as it can't happen here. Fascism only happens in other countries except for America. Well, it can happen here, right? Imperialist boomerang back in the face, right?
Surprise, bitches.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Okay. So are we wrapping up?
Yep. Okay. Because I always got more that I'm trying to share than I got time for. I was just trying to maybe maybe I have to come back, learn more about Islam before I try and talk about the Muslim Brotherhood. But I feel like there's some evidence that the US, the CIA during the Cold War managed to use the Muslim Brotherhood for, like, you could say that they infiltrated them and that they use them against their will. But I'm just saying it seems like these groups, like whether they're anti-Zionist or not, they served the interest of imperialism, whether they were anti-imperialist or not. So we have to be more discerning, I think, about who we support, regardless of what they claim to represent. We just have to be able to see far enough into the future about what the contradictions are, as to what are they really the revolutionary force today or not, kind of thing. Because more often than not, I don't think they actually are. But we need something to have put our hope in, because otherwise we kind of get defeatist and nihilist. It's better to believe in a Bashar al-Assad Syria than it is to say cynically, there is no hope here. Let the Jelani take over. But it's not really Marxist anymore. It's not dialectic anymore, right? So
look who popped up there ahead, Christopher.
Oh, good to see you. Been a while.
You know what? When he comes, he's gonna say the same thing. He's gonna tell you every time he pops in. It's like his peace, fam.
Some people are
Indigenous American Indian family.
Some people have a certain thing that they are all about, and they need resolution on this issue before they can move on to anything else. So.
Yep. Okay, so we'll be back Tuesday for the open discussion. I guess are we just gonna try to start at 2 Central again?
Yeah, I
Like
think
we did?
I gotta walk Bella around 2 o'clock Eastern, which would be 3. If you want to start 2 o'clock Central, that would be 3 o'clock Eastern. So that gives me, I could still do my walk with her like I normally do, and I gotta eat some lunch if we're gonna do a long stream. So
Okay, so we'll try to put the stream up and so people could like set it up to notify themselves or whatever. We'll do that sometime this weekend, I guess. And then we'll be back next Thursday to talk about, I think we decided that we're going to be talking about Vietnam, but like a lot could happen in a week. So
yeah, well, I think it might be.
I dropped your mom to church. She gonna comment a little bit.
why should you go?
She asked me to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry
I just
about
think
that.
it's okay. I was just gonna say it might be a relevant, good time to talk about Vietnam, especially because we just were talking about Afghanistan and the ending of this episode, and how like the parallel historically between Afghanistan and Vietnam is the America humiliating exit with the helicopter being pushed off of the whatever. You remember the iconic image of the helicopter being pushed off of the aircraft carrier, and it's an example of super extensive military machinery that's important enough not to be abandoned like that. If geopolitical interests outweigh the material, whatever benefit of salvaging that equipment, they will abandon it. Whatever the calculus will be, that it's more cost effective to get out of there quickly than to make sure you get out with all your shit intact. So now we're looking about how Afghanistan's kind of come full circle. Now we should look in to see what's going on with Vietnam today, because the narrative is that Vietnam kicked America out. They won the war. So, but we see in Afghanistan, doesn't look like the Taliban really won. If they're the compradors are sneaking in, right? But I think Vietnam's a different story. It'd be interesting to look into it and see what the differences and the parallels are. So.
That's interesting. I forgot about this. I had to Google it. I was like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, no, that's what comes to mind whenever we talk about Vietnam
Vietnam.
US exit of Vietnam. That helicopter is what I think of. Oh yeah, Extra Bullet was reaching out to me on the Twitter there. I haven't been on my Twitter all day, sorry, but he's invited us to come on to Extra Bullet Live. So you want to?
Oh, awesome!
Arrange that.
We appreciate the invite. Yes.
Yes, I'll DM you on the Twitterverse. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for reminding me. All right, we had enough
to say.
Yeah.
I've had enough, honey.
Yeah, I'm kind of hungry.
Go lay down. And apparently I have to pick my mom up from church.
All right.
She usually drives herself, so that was kind of interesting that she asked to be dropped off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I wonder what that means.
I don't know.
Okay, so we will see you guys on Tuesday, if you can make it, or next Thursday, or, whenever you can make it.
Yeah. We'll see you when we see you.
Bye, fam.
Have a good night.
Good night.
And maybe tonight's a good time for my little line I say sometimes. If we treat life like it's a game or a race, the war will be endless. Tomorrow is not today. Peace out.